Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Community Development Committee meeting for March 13th, 2013. We'd like to start this meeting with a moment of silent meditation. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call this meeting to order and identify the members of our committee that are here tonight. We have Alex Bomber from Kilkenny Law, Jim Hirsch from Gilmore Associates, Commissioner Peruzzi, Commissioner Spear, Commissioner McFatridge, Township Manager Matt Canlin, Code Enforcement Officer Paul Patel, and our Director of Public Works David Elsier. Do we have any presentations or announcements? All right, we'll go right into our approval of minutes from February 15th.
I have no changes.
I have no comments.
Okay. We'll enter those into the record, as is. And we'll start off with our new business item, amusement devices waiver request for H&V Willow Grove LLC located at 1056 Easton Road. Someone here? Good evening.
Yeah, hi, my name is Kenneth Jacoby. We had leased the space, which was the old Geico place. Before that, I guess it was a 7-Eleven across the street from Scantech. We got approval on all of our plans. We did want to put in 3 amusement machines. We did a survey. I know the regulation is that we should be 300 feet away from any residence. We're about 188 feet in one direction and 175 feet in another direction. We're just looking for relief on that to see if we could install them. We do card everybody that comes in, and they have to be 21, not 18. Yeah, so.
Okay, so I read your proposal, and the one thing that I cautioned myself on was that you mentioned that the gaming part that you've experienced other places is a big part of your business.
Correct.
So, like, if that's...
It's a good portion of it. I mean, it's not gonna make or break us, but, you know, we have 6 to 8 machines in 2 other locations, but we can live with the 3 if...
And are they other locations you have, are they also affiliated with like a smoke shop?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the core part of your business is the smoke shop?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any
Yeah,
questions?
but we're not allowed to serve on anybody under 21 anyway, so.
So we had a similar situation occur with a business up the street that sort of falls into the same category of what you're dealing with here. And what we wound up doing and what I proposed to my fellow commissioners is the trial period with a lesser amount of machines than requested. What we basically did was we allowed for a couple. We gave them a trial period. We allowed it to function within the community and see if there was any negative feedback based on that. And then at the end of that trial period, if there was no commentary, my mic is not on. If there was no commentary, then you were permitted to continue operating. It is my ward. I feel comfortable working with the precedent that was set on this, and encouraging our community to provide any feedback if there is any, because this is
That would be great.
something that's not allowed without proper say so. And then the other thing that I saw in looking at your floor plan for this was, you're coming in for relief on this, and then you're placing them right at the front window, so it's 100% visible
Right.
from a major intersection. So I would say that a condition on this trial period, and if it were to continue later, is that they would need to be moved further into the building, so they're not
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
visible.
We just like to keep an eye on them from our POS area. That's,
Yeah, understood. I just I don't want them being a sales point from the street, especially.
we could actually black out the windows where they are too. I mean, if that makes a difference, so.
That's completely up to you. I just don't want, I wouldn't want them as visible amusement gambling machines from that intersection.
Okay.
How does everybody else feel about what I said or this proposal in general?
I like the idea of fewer machines for a trial period, but he's only asking for 3 total.
Well, so was the other group, and I think we allowed them 2.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. This setback rule that we have, does this require notification of the people that are within the setback area?
We could certainly do that. It's only 2 residences that are that close, so.
So there's 2 that were like within that 188, I think there's
Yeah,
another
like if
house
you
that's
go-
still less than
If you
300.
go across the street where Uka is,
Yeah,
there's a house behind Uka. And then when you go behind the building, there's a
I meant
road.
going up towards Russell.
Right.
It's Watertown, there's more than one home.
Right.
So, I just would like to have them notified. Paul, we don't have a notification requirement for that, right?
Not for this, no, because it's not, this requirement is not in the zoning ordinance. It's actually in township code, which is waivable by, or all the requirements can be altered by the board of commissioners.
So how would we do that to require notification of the homes that fall within the 300 feet? Well, it's not in, yeah, I know.
You could amend the ordinance to put that requirement in there, but it's not in there now.
So Mr. Jacoby offered to
Voluntarily do it.
voluntarily send an announcement to these residents.
Yeah, I could certainly do
So,
that.
I mean-
I'll go knock on the door. It's
Yeah.
not a problem.
Sure, I mean, if that's satisfactory, any objections to that? No? Okay.
Just provide us proof of
Yeah.
notification.
Okay.
And that would be all of those residents along Russell Road there that are within that
Yes.
170? If there's like 3 houses, 4 houses, and then the one that you mentioned across the way?
Right. There's
Is that
one house
problematic,
that's-
Alex, at all?
No, I mean, no, not at all. It's just an extra condition essentially you're gonna put in this resolution if you grant it.
Okay.
Okay.
I think in written form also.
Okay.
Okay.
I
That
can-
way we can have a copy of the letter as well, and unless you want to film yourself knocking on everybody's doors,
Okay.
probably not worth it. Okay.
They were the few points that I was interested in, and I like Commissioner Peruzzi's idea also as well. Kip, you have anything on this?
No, I don't like them, but I agreed with it last time because of the conditional use and see if the residents, if they don't complain, then we really, I don't think have a good reason not to. So.
Yeah, our other 2
I would go with
locations, we have had no problems whatsoever.
What municipalities are they in, the other 2 locations?
Pardon me?
What municipalities are the other 2
We're
locations?
in Middletown Township and Morrisville.
I don't like them either, Kip. Just put that out there.
No,
Yeah.
just saying.
But, fair is fair.
But I like your,
Yeah.
you brought it up the last time and it's worked so far, so.
Any other commissioner comments? Any public comments?
I do have a question. So with the neighbor notification, if Mr. Jacoby notifies the neighbors and they take exception to it, I mean, are you moving this for action or are you holding it until we get possible feedback or?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that would all fall within that trial period. And that trial period that we extended to the other business was 6 months.
6 months, yes.
So,
Well, so I disagree with that. Like, the notification of the neighbors would be that if we decide to move this out of committee,
Yeah.
that we'd be voting on it the first of the month.
understood.
So that would be the notification required to the to the other residents.
I think you want to make it a prerequisite that you have that information in your hands before you vote at your next general meeting to approve the resolution.
Yeah, exactly what I'm looking for, yeah.
Okay, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
We wouldn't be finished with construction before then anyway.
Right.
So,
That makes sense.
So we would have to, what's our voting meeting? What's the date of the voting meeting?
Yeah.
So if you could get that accomplished in 2 weeks, that would be helpful.
no problem, sir.
So put it on the April 3rd agenda, then also report back at that meeting.
I'm in favor of moving out of this committee. I mean, it looks like everybody else is too.
So we would need the information no later than the proof of mailing by March 28th.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Fine. Is that-
Okay.
all right.
Appreciate your time.
Thank
Thank you
sir.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, was there any public comment? I didn't give it a complete chance for that. All right, very good. All right, thank you. All right, no other new business items? Old business. Anton, Maryland Road Culvert Project.
So at the last meeting, we talked about the Maryland, sorry. Talked about the Maryland Road culvert and the preliminary information that we received, and we went back to FEMA. So we discussed about progressing the design. So in the packet is our proposal to do the final design of the project, environmental permitting, and get it through the bid package stage. So that, the total there was for $180,000. One of the things talked with Matt about is, you know, pursuing funding for these construction and maybe also including the engineering in that request. So that's kind of the recommendation is we got this information for the final design. We have the construction cost is looking for funding for the full amount. So that would be my recommendation for the board as far as moving forward, not acting on this proposal at this time, but using this information to pursue a grant.
Okay, I have a couple questions.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about relining this. We had some other conversations about if we didn't reline it and we had to reconstruct the whole thing, that we talked about making it wider because of the plans we have for the intersection of Maryland and Commerce. Do we need that?
Yeah, that's further down from the intersection, and typically you're constrained to matching the existing opening, you know, since it's in the FEMA floodway.
Right, I'm just thinking about like,
Widening the.
if we had to move one of the abutments,
Right.
certainly.
Yeah, I think we're okay there as far as the, all the widening for Maryland and Commerce ends before the structure.
Okay. The report talks about the impact on the floodplain. What do we have to do there? Do we have to restudy that area, or?
So when we went back and we looked at the FEMA guidelines, we talked with our sub-consultant that's been through that FEMA process before. Since it's below a foot of change, elevation change, and it's not a regulated floodway, we don't have to do the advanced study to justify doing that. We just need to map it after construction. So it
Okay.
eliminated a step.
Okay. I also, you know, we're all aware of substantial improvements that have been done upstream since the original floodplain study was done. You know, any of those possibly be considered benefits of the study afterwards?
Yeah, I can go back and look at what they included in the H&H. It's not my personal.
No, I know that.
Yeah,
but I mean,
but yeah, I mean, we can look at, once we do the post-study, that's something we could,
so Upper Moreland made an investment in improvements in Horsham Township,
right.
a couple different ones. And UPS did a pretty big basin improvement, when they build a parking garage up there. So I think those two things might help us, with that 1 foot change,
Yeah,
or less than 1 foot change.
correct, yeah,
Very important.
correct. It's like 1 inch.
Anybody else have any comments about the, Maryland Road culvert and where we should go from here?
Well, the only comment I have, 600,000 to do the whole project, and it's 1/3 of that addition to it as far as, I guess, your engineering work. It just sounds high that you're 30% of the
Yeah.
entire project for that.
Yeah, and I dealt with him as far as like structures, it's I think it's typical that it's more expensive with the structures and the permitting, that it's more a percentage of it, but I can ask our guys to look at it and compare it to other ones that we've worked on in the past.
And is it more permitting, DEP and everything else because it's a waterway?
Yes, yeah.
That,
I don't know all the permits, there's different permits that are required, but I'm sure there's multiple ones that we have to.
That would be included in
Yes, yes.
the 180,000. Do we have, this is from the board, do we have money for this 180,000 just for that?
We don't have that money budgeted anywhere, so if we were to fund it out of our bond, it would be possibly replacing something else that was in the bond.
Do we have any money
What-
for this project budgeted? I mean, we've known about this project for.
Yeah, and I think the idea was it was gonna be a borrowing project, or taking from the existing bond and deferring another, or the combination of that with seeking grant funding.
Okay, then, the bonds that you would be going after for construction, the ones that you go after, is that normally 100%, 50%, 20% matching?
So the ones that I would think we'd pursue is the DCED MTF,
Okay,
which in the past, they've allowed the township to waive the match. So we can look at that as an option. The other ones are retro reimbursement, municipal retro reimbursement program, which is a 80/20 for every engineering, construction, inspect, like every component of it, so,
they would take the full amount then?
Yeah.
For that one?
yeah, that's 80/20.
It's a matter of,
We can't not do it.
well, we have to do it. It's a matter of funding and where we're going to get it, and when we're going to do it.
Did we have an idea, Anton, how long the design process would take?
I didn't print out that page. I think it's probably 12 months.
Okay, so
I
it
mean,
could be,
most of it's going to be in the permitting, the environmental permitting, and their review timelines.
so the board could start the design process, and concurrently with that, we could be seeking grant funds. And maybe after, there's gonna be a couple rounds of the multimodal during that time, maybe we're able to capture most of that funding through the grants that Anton had
But
mentioned.
we would be putting out the 180,000.
Yeah, and then maybe some of those you could recover, maybe depending on the grant source, you might be able to recover some of that, but some of the others, but that is the risk, is that if you didn't get any of that grant funding, you'd be out of pocket the 180.
Well, the grant funding have to be retroactive then, for,
Or for the construction, or retroactive.
Yeah, like the municipal reimbursement, that would go back to the work we even did prior. You know, we could include that, but I think multimodal, DCD multimodal, it starts when the agreement's signed.
So your fee structure is broken down into 10 tasks. Is there any way that we could phase this and
I can
have a
look into that.
smaller chunk at a time?
Yeah, I can
While
go
we're
back
working on
and
the
look
grants?
to see what we can get started on. and-
Yeah. Because, I mean, we've identified this project for years now. It's something that definitely has to be done. We gotta start moving it forward, but maybe not that full chunk at this point.
How long do you think it'll take to get an answer, or first, when do you apply for the DCED?
That's usually at July,
July? And how long till they get back to us?
typically November. This last
Okay.
round, they're still waiting awards.
Any other comments?
No.
Any other commissioner comments, the audience? Any public comment? Okay,
What are you doing with this?
we're gonna move this for action for the $180,000. To actually
Where's it coming
authorize-
from?
Authorize going forward, figured out the source. I mean, I would say we have to go with the bond money and then, figure it out.
Put it back.
And put it back. I mean, we've been aware of this for a few years now. And we have other work to do in this area. A lot of work to do in this area. And I'd actually like to get this lining done before the project gets worse. And then we don't have choices like this.
So I'm sorry, Tom, what was the grant window again? You said when did it open up again?
DCED MTF opens up, usually opens up around May, closes July, and usually they make awards in November. That's typical.
All right, so you'll be halfway to 3/4 of the way through your design work at that point.
Yeah, and I can go back and look at the phasing before the next meeting, and
I mean, yeah, okay, that's fine. I don't know what it's gonna do at this point.
What,
I'm working through the numbers.
what bond money are you pulling this from, Matt?
It was the last bond, the most.
The one for Woodlawn?
No, I'm sorry, the one before that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you know how much money we do have in it? Roughly?
I think we've got over $1 million on that one, but I'd have to, for an exact figure, I'd have to talk to Randy.
Okay.
And let the board know what the other, kind of like the benchmarks were that created the money to begin with.
What's not going to get done that we already
Right.
thought of for this?
Okay.
You're good at approving money, I know that.
I'm curious too about if that's the bond that it's coming from. We've known about this. I'm wondering if checking with Randy would prove that we've already sort of allocated a chunk of money towards this project.
We had to identify issues to generate the number for the bond.
Right.
So,
When we did that previous bond, I don't think we had any numbers on this at that point. That would have been we would have it'd been 2.5, 3 years ago.
I
when we-
think one of the projects was Blair Mill Road. I think that may have been part of that bond money.
Yeah, and the board always had, the way those bonds are written is there's flexibility for really any capital projects. I mean, even the Woodlawn one was done over a year ago. So that bond issuance. And so I think it was at least 2 years ago, and probably in between 2 and 3 that we did the other bond.
I think you should say this, we would move it forward, but it should go to finance in 2 weeks for them to declare where it's coming from and that stuff. And so that way we have the information before we vote on it at the end of the month. That's all. But this board's willing to,
In 2 weeks?
Next week.
Confused me. I didn't know we had off for St. Patty's Day, but we should.
it's my birthday. So.
So we'll place it on the finance administration agenda then.
Yeah, just to figure the money out.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere, please. We're going to go right into your traffic report, if you don't mind.
Sure. So our traffic reports in your packet. I'll just call a couple things and then you guys can ask questions. I guess first thing, just want to draw attention to is our Route 611 project, the Turnpike project. One of the things that's come up is in discussions with KSA in pursuing grants, most likely looking for a federal grant is, most of them require benefit cost analysis following US DOT regulations. So it's something we probably should look to prepare that documentation. A lot of the traffic stuff that was done on that project is a little older. And I think roughly, I forget the range, it would probably be like 3,500 to 4,500 to prepare that.
So what are we looking for? Are we looking for car counts? We looking for?
Yeah, projection, doing the traffic, new counts and projecting the traffic and then doing a benefit cost analysis. And we're going to follow US DOT guidelines for that. So when these grants come up, we have this information. We can hand them, we talk with legislators. Again, we have the data to back up supporting why it's needed.
Anton, how long is that information good for? Is there kind of an expiration date on that kind of data?
I mean, it's all, we'll set we'll start with today's date on the traffic and then we'll set a date for an opening date. So we'll look probably somewhere in the future, 4 or 5 years, to make sure, that it's still relevant for a while.
Okay, so we have ability to get car counts from the turnpike? I mean, that's a
And
big,
PennDOT, we'll use that, any information we have. I mean, we can supplement it with some field counts too. But I think PennDOT also has a lot of counters on 611, so we'll use what is available.
okay. Do we need crash data also?
Yeah, we'll look at that, because that's part of the cost end of it, benefit cost. We'll look at that crash data. We can coordinate with the police, but I mean, we'll probably pull 611 PennDOT's database too.
The one concern I have about this project is that the additional lane is included so that we can get 2 left-hand turn lanes off of Mill Road. I know we had that as a separate item, but if we're going to put, the 2 lanes on to the turnpike, we always talked about 2 left-hand turn lanes coming off of Mill Road.
Yep.
And then that shortens the queue for that light.
Okay. Moving on, the next one I had on there is Warminster Road sidewalk. We're getting close with the property owners, so we want to move forward with bidding it in our report is a schedule for bidding, putting it out for bidding. Looking at the end of the month, having it advertised with a bid opening in April, reviewing it with you guys here in May, and before the board in June for award, and then maybe looking to start in July, ending in October, in conjunction with the closure of the bridge.
And where are we at with the closure of the bridge?
I believe it's April 1st, it's to be closed.
April 1st or the 3rd, they had a sign.
Yeah, probably, not on Saturday.
And did we have that emergency management discussion already about that?
Detour plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. The school district has it. We discussed it briefly during our school board meeting. It's been distributed to department directors, fire and police. So it's out there. I mean, essentially they're taking it up to County Line Road or Turwood, they're just going around it. And so it's early April close, anticipated to be done November, December. I think if I'm a betting man, it's probably going to be a little longer than that. And I think the sidewalk project theoretically would start in July, end in October, September. It should be a relatively fast project. 2 or 3 months should be enough time. So we should finish well before they open the bridge back up.
I sent an email, I think, to Anton and you about Former Heights. Did you get that? Maybe it didn't go to
The
you.
additional sidewalk?
They have 300 and something houses in there. They just wanted to know the plans and schedules and stuff.
Oh, yeah, I sent it to, I sent it to him.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, he's got it.
Good.
And the only other one I'll just bring up, last time we talked about the connection of a sidewalk, a path along Turwood and Davisville, and Jim and I discussed that, and it's something we'll take the lead on, putting those plans together.
Oh, okay, where Pennypack Road is.
Correct, yes, Pennypack Road.
Yep.
But putting concept plans, right? Because we didn't
Right, yeah,
identify
yeah.
which one to lead with.
Right.
Okay. All right.
So that was the only ones I wanted to highlight.
Commerce?
Yes, that one's Maryland Commerce, the roadway widening. I think that's moving forward. I'll get put together a schedule for you guys moving forward. I'll put it in our,
So that's also a bid item, right?
yeah, that'll have to be bid by the township.
And then coordination with Horsham for their Commerce, Whitmer, and Blair Mill Road project. Do they have a date set for that?
Yes, that was, I think it's in there. This year is mostly utility relocations. On our first page, they issued notice proceed, or anticipating utility relocations most of this year with the roadway improvements next year.
And I know we discussed a few times about you having a conversation with the manager in Horsham about places like UPS being a big benefactor of this Horsham Road Commerce Drive improvement. Any feedback from Mr. Walker about that?
Are you talking about trying to have UPS participate? Was
Yes.
that, I don't think they would be involved in that. Like, if that's something that we would need to approach UPS on, and I don't suspect.
So one of the things we discussed, along with the Dave L. Sears Committee, was that a few years ago, when we decided that we had to repave Maryland Road, we thought it would be a good idea to put concrete in there for about 600 feet because the blacktop pushes so much, large trucks, and you see it on Easton Road. And it was cost prohibitive. So we went with macadam, and it's buckling. So we do want to keep the users of that corridor in mind. They did contribute at one time when that road was originally widened. So if we don't ask, we definitely don't get. So could you revisit that with Mr. Walker again?
Or would you like us to approach UPS directly, or are you suggesting?
I certainly don't want to do it without Horsham being aware of it.
Okay.
I know there's, where we're at with Blair Mill Road, that's the little piece of Blair Mill Road that's not going to be done yet. We still have to figure out that traffic light between the two shopping centers. If Blair Mill Road ends up getting the 4 lanes all the way, that light's going to be a must. I mean, it should be already. We've
The
had,
one at Horsham Gate and
Yeah.
Lowe's, yeah, I believe that's under, they have somebody on contractor just waiting for them materials to come in. The mast arms take a long time.
okay.
Yeah, there was an update that Bill sent out, and I think I shared it with all of you guys, about how they're working on utility work now. They've had some meetings with neighbors, and 'cause some of that work affects residents of Upper Warren Township. So that's moving along.
And if you have a discussion with UPS, you should probably mention that there'll be restrictions on Maryland Road when we do this bridge, because that is their main route. That's the bridge. That's what they take. So just so they do know that, there's going to be things that they won't be able to use for.
Do you
Your
think,
foot in the door?
do you think, Anton, that the improvements that we're proposing on Blair Mill Road to make the right onto Easton, would that be enough to incentivize UPS to use that, or is it too sharp of a right-hand turn that's the reason they're avoiding it? Do you have any sense of that?
It probably helps, but it's probably more our southbound ramp that backs up.
Right.
It's still
So all of those things?
Yeah.
The queuing on the right-hand turn, that backs them up.
Yeah.
Sharp turn there, plus the backup on the,
ramp.
yeah, because it is pretty smooth. You get on Maryland Road, you come down to Easton, you make the left, and you're right on the
So
turnpike.
we're going to now have 2 left-hand turns from Commerce onto Maryland, and then 2 lanes all the way down to continue the on-ramp with 2 lanes.
Right.
It moves a lot of traffic, and it's very helpful to them. And, we could talk traffic all day long, but one more piece is the Blair Mill and Easton. Where are we with our lane widening there? Are we settled with properties there?
Yeah, I think just have to talk with Alex? I think we still have some paperwork we have to get to the property owners, right? For preliminary work. Yeah. So I'll coordinate with Alex to get that stuff out to the
Okay.
property owners.
We need them all to dedicate it right away because they never did it.
Right.
So that's not the major hiccup, but it was the hiccup.
That's a pain. And is there any further conversation about the intersection? Or those updates are yet to come?
You mean the property they just bought?
Yeah.
With the, there was a brief discussion, remember we had talked about joint partnering on a Montco 2040, and at that point, they were not contemplating some of the pedestrian improvements. But no, they're moving, you might even know more than we do on that. They are designing the improvements there. Do you have any idea where that is?
I'm not sure where they are in the process, but I know recently just started design of that and the other section between Walmart and Whitmer.
Yeah. So it's their intention to do it, they've acquired the property, as you know, and my understanding from Bill is that they've started the design process for that. So that might take some time to design that. And it's really just the right-hand turn lane, because I had mentioned to him that there were ideally some improvements we would make on the opposite side that would provide some improved right-hand turning northbound. So, yeah, so I don't know how we want to time that. I don't know if there's any benefits to maybe trying to fast forward that project, to have that work occurring at the same time. Is there any benefit to that?
I think we just touch base with them where they are on the designs and see what they can
Okay.
incorporate in.
That's Baker, right?
Correct.
Do you mind reaching out to Baker to
No.
see where they are?
Any follow-up on the traffic engineering report?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any public comment or other commissioners? Covered a lot of material. All right, thank you very much, Anton.
Yep.
Okay, next up is we're going to go to the mod car wash.
Good evening, committee. Thank you for having us here tonight.
Good evening.
All right, perfect. Evening, committee. Bryce McGuigan from Begley Carlin here on behalf of Hutton Willow Grove, the equitable owner of the property located at 2711 Easton Road. As I'm sure the committee recalls, we've been before you previously regarding this project, and we've also been before the zoning hearing board a couple of times, as well as the APA in addition. And just as I'm sure as everyone knows, but just to clarify, obviously we bought the property, or under contract at 2711 Easton Road through 2717 Easton Road, the site of the former 7-Eleven and two other office buildings on the parcels. And our plan is still to consolidate these three separate parcels into one property and to build a designated mod wash, car wash facility with a Take 5. As that part of the plan has not changed. However, after we received zoning relief and after we were before you previously, we heard from PennDOT that they had some general concerns about the access to the site. Specifically, if you'll recall, the prior iteration of the plan. So this, where my laser pointer is the site. Previously, and one of the reasons we came before you was because we were changing access. We were closing off multiple of the accesses through Easton Road and consolidating that to one major point of access. We were also closing off the access on Linden Ave and focusing on an access on Willow. So previously, the last plan that was before the zoning hearing board was essentially the plan that's before you today. To orient everybody, the car wash, the mod wash car wash, is on the south side of the parcel, which is on the right of what you're looking at. Take 5 is on the left side or the north side of the parcel. As you can see, this right here was where the old access was that we're going to get rid of. And instead, we were proposing just one access on Willow together with the main access on 611. This was all designed to try, and the part of the interesting thing about this property is that obviously the front 611 is a commercial property. However, we want to make sure to do what we can to prevent traffic from going to the neighborhoods to the rear. So the exit onto Linden was a left out only in order to dissuade traffic from going through the neighborhood. However, like I said, PennDOT came back to us and said they would prefer access on Willow, or on Linden rather, compared to Willow. This was a couple reasons. First, if we go back to the satellite, one of the things they were concerned about was traffic coming south on 611 and wanting to turn left on Willow to get to the property. There's no decel lane there, no deceleration lane. So they were concerned about vehicles making that left. If vehicles couldn't really make that left in a safe manner, they were concerned about vehicles coming down and making the left onto Linden, cycling through the neighborhoods and then entering the site, or vehicles making that left at Linden but turning it into an illegal U-turn and accessing the site through Easton. So because of those various reasons, PennDOT wanted us to change the access. So we came up with this plan, which we provided to the township last week. Essentially what you'll see is the proposed access on Willow. We removed that, instead added an access onto Linden, which is in approximately the same location as there is a current access on Linden. Essentially, what this would do is it would be a one-way access to the site. Vehicles come in through Linden, access the site. We would also maintain the access on 611. And this would have a benefit, in our opinion, as well as PennDOT, a couple different things. We go back to the satellite. There's the designated decel left turn lane onto Linden. So vehicles come in, make the left, and access the site that way. It would remove any reason for vehicles to travel around the neighborhood and access the site. And when vehicles leave the site, it would be the same as any other business that comes to this property. They're all on 611 northbound. However, after we provided that plan to the township traffic engineer took a look and voiced a few concerns. Specifically, the first concern was how close the Linden Avenue access point was to 611, the potential for queuing of vehicles backing up onto 611, which we obviously understand. The second point was the proximity of what I'm going to call this drive aisle here, this access aisle, to the actual roadway, and how that could lead to some disorientation among motorists going northbound on 611, which we also understand. So we have another plan. All right, we've been hard at work the last week. So this one, brand new, literally got it today, so I apologize that's was not in your packets. So essentially, it takes the entrance on Linden and moves it further away from 611. So that way, that removes any risk of vehicles queuing. We also moved the building over a little in order to ensure that there would be an appropriate turning radius, which we've done traffic engineering, and we have our traffic engineer here, plans regarding a Ford F-250 being able to make that turn safely, which is the largest vehicle that the car wash can accommodate. So there's no issue with that. So the access still remains through Linden into the property and back on, through the site. The access at 611 also remains the same. And with regard to the other comment that McMahon mentioned, which was the proximity of this drive aisle to the roadway, two things there. First of all, there's actually a bit of a buffer between this drive aisle and the roadway of approximately, actually a little excess of 10 feet. But there's also what we plan to have is a disparity in terms of the elevations. So it's not as if there's going to be a drive lane there that's going to be right next to 611 that can cause that sort of discrepancy, cause that sort of potential for confusion. So those, in our opinion, are the two ways that this plan more so addresses the comments that McMahon made in their review letter from last week. And obviously, we're trying to take into consideration the comments that PennDOT gave us in order to address those concerns as well. So I know I just talked a little bit, and I do have with me the actual brains behind the operations here. I have Al Busher and Bob Blickley from BL Companies, who's the engineer on the project, together with Eric, I don't want to butcher your last name, there's Ostemchuk, nice, from TPD. So he got involved to try to help us out of this little pickle here. So like I said, this is the most current iteration of the plan. I have here, like I said, the brains behind the operation who can hopefully answer any questions that the board has. But obviously, we've been before this committee previously, and one of the main selling points of this project is the fact that we are reducing these points of access and trying to eliminate traffic through the neighborhood. So being as this is a somewhat notable change to the plans that this committee has reviewed and the township has reviewed time and time again through the past year or so, we figured it would be appropriate to come back before this committee to get your suggestions, potential input before we move forward with the land development process. So with all of that said, if obviously the committee has any questions, we'll be more than happy to address those.
Yeah, so on Willard, on this side over here, or Willow, no access at all, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so your lower corner when you're coming in Linden, down here,
Yes.
from the radius here, do we know what is the distance from here to, let's say, the traffic light bar, where they're going to be stacked to go through the intersection?
So you're saying the distance between this entry point on Linden and the actual roadway? Or,
Where the red light would be, where the bar would be for the treadle, the pickup.
There's no traffic light at that intersection.
no, there's no traffic light, but there is a designated left turn lane that bumps out.
That's right, it's the next one.
An existing left-hand turn lane to come
Existing, yes, sir.
in off of Easton Road southbound.
That's correct. And, generally, and just backtrack a little, what we do expect is that the vast majority of the traffic that we will receive and the business that we'll get at this site will be from northbound traffic. And part of the reason why we anticipate that is because much like, I'm sure the board has seen some of these other car wash companies come through. It's basically a newer design, and we are at the forefront of this, where essentially it's a subscription membership-based service where people will pay an X amount of dollars per month for unlimited service at our car wash. And essentially what we anticipate is, especially on this site, they're going to bake that into their day. They're going to plan their day, hey, I'm going to go get a car wash. So if they're heading to work and they're going northbound in the morning, they're going to get this done in the morning. If they're headed home from work at the end of the day and they're going northbound at the end of the day, they're going to do this at the end of the day. Partly because, I'm sure, as we all know, and as I know, I used to go up and back and forth to the courthouse for a year and a half through this direction. It's kind of a pain to access the other side when you're going one way on 611. So we do anticipate that a large portion, a majority of our service is going to come from the northbound direction. However, for the southbound traveling customers, this does provide a more defined method for them to get through to the site.
We've met a few times, and I was impressed with the volume that you can handle through the car wash, top one, bottom one. So my question is that you have a high volume going through there. I'm concerned about this internal traffic in this area. You need a haircut anyhow. It looks like an internal traffic jam there. We talked about volume coming in. They can process them real fast. They get their cars through there, and then they have cars coming out of the car wash going through the vacuum area, cars coming into the car wash in the same area, and then cars accessing oil, lube, and filter.
And if I may add to something, because that's an excellent point, and I have the same sort of problem or question at the in-out lane on Easton. Because if you come in off of Linden and you make that swoop around and you decide, oh, you know what, I just got this emergency phone call, I can't go through the car wash right now, I gotta get out. The mindset is to hang a sharp left and get back onto Easton right there, because that's your only way out. And so it seems like a very tight pinch point at that intersection too. So those two internal intersections look a little tight or a little cluttered.
Sure, and to address each one of those. So regarding the first one, Commissioner Spearing, that you mentioned, this right here, the internal stack to this point provides for 20 vehicles. And that's just before you get to the tunnel. It doesn't even include the tunnel distance or any vehicles afterward. So even though I understand your point, We do have significant space to accommodate a number of vehicles if there's an issue. There's also an emergency release lane here, just in case there are any significant concerns. And we do have employees on site. Every minute of every day that this is open, we have multiple employees, and that's pretty much all their job is, to make sure that this whole area remains clean and that the tunnel remains operating smoothly. And if the committee would like, I have Bill Hall here, who's the project manager from Hutton, from Modwash, who can provide some detail as to the amount of vehicles that we generally expect to see here, the service times, that sort of thing. Eric also has reviewed multiple locations for our business and can offer some input as to exact stacking and queuing and what you should expect on site. There's really been no change with regard to the internal circulation of the site or the stacking calculus since we first came before you a long time ago. That's one of the few things that has not changed. With regard to this kind of merge point where the drive aisle from Linden comes off, I understand exactly what you're saying, and we've thought about this. And that's why we're going to have some speed humps there and a stop sign in order to help slow down and stop traffic at this point. If somebody wants to be a jerk and make this weird left hook there, I mean, I guess if people want to make illegal turns, there's unfortunately not too much that we can do about it. But what I would say is we're trying to make this point as safe as possible by stopping this traffic so that people have an opportunity to look left and ensure that the path is clear before they go forward into the site. So if somebody does want to make that illegal turn, like I said, we'll have the appropriate signage so that people know not to. But, you know, if somebody wants to be a jerk, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. We're just trying to make this area as safe as possible so that people can go into the site and there's a safe merge point.
Taking the jerk factor off the table.
Sure.
Like, is that even wide enough to make a one loop turn?
Well, here, one.
It looks like it would be a K turn or something. It would be all sorts of backed up.
Well, that's a little beyond my purview here, but maybe Eric might be able to provide some detail here.
Good evening. Eric Ostenchuk, Traffic Planning and Design. And the question regarding the left turn there was actually something that we talked about the other day. And Bryce, you may not recall this, but we thought about that exact movement coming out of that, drive aisle there. And we, through the design with PennDOT, have the ability to extend that pork chop further into the site to eliminate the ability to, well, there's too many buttons on that.
Oh, it's that one.
All right. So we can extend that into the site to kind of block that off for that movement.
Because it's your only out on that entire site.
Yeah.
Correct.
You have one way out for 100 cars you're going to have on that site. If you max capacity, right?
Correct. Well,
not sure 100 is the right number, but
no,
you get my drift,
and
right?
that leads to the queuing question, which I have some information on as well. But yeah, that was with the one access to enter on the 611.
Well, one access and again,
Well,
one exit.
One exit,
You got
correct.
two access and one exit from the site.
And at the end of the day, the prior iteration, even though there were two exits that were proposed, they were both going to lead directly onto 611. Because the prior exit onto Willow, it was a left out only, because again, we don't want to funnel traffic through into the neighborhoods. So right now, yes, there's just this lone exit onto 611, but previously it was essentially more or less the same thing with the two exits pretty much directly on the 611 as well.
Right. And Bill may have the exact information regarding the operations of the tunnel, but these new car wash can do anywhere from 120 to 160, 180 sometimes vehicles in an hour. That many vehicles is not anticipated for this site. It's somewhere south of 100 vehicles in an hour, but it can accommodate upwards of those numbers. You're asking the right questions because we're in a lot of municipalities with these new car washes, and the same question comes up in every municipality, the stacking, because everyone remembers this car washes from the 80s and 90s that, they had the hand drying or whatever it may be, and they couldn't operate as quickly as these operate. So we've done a number of queuing studies throughout Montgomery County on these types of subscription-based car washes, and 20 vehicles is the maximum stacking that we found on even, one of the nicest days in February. We had, 60-degree weather, if you recall, so we made sure to do counts on those days for the stacking. And, we found about 20 vehicles as the maximum stacking.
That's 20 vehicles from the point of entry?
It's from the tunnel. The limiting factor, because these are subscription-based, you drive up, and I don't know Modwash's exact way that they're going to do it, but the one that I belong to is just a window sticker that you pull up, and you just pull right through the pay area. That's not the limiting factor. It's getting the vehicles into the tunnel and getting them moving.
And it's only subscriptions, or it's just mostly subscriptions?
Mostly subscriptions.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because if you had 21 cars, 22 cars, you're not getting out of there. That's backing up into that knuckle.
And that's, they go dead after a while?
No, it's lit.
Oh, there, yeah, oh well. Right at where every car has to go through the tunnel and go through the vacuums. Is that correct?
Correct.
So then when they're making that left, yes, you have stocking for 20 cars past that. But after a salting event or something in the snow, I've been there at several, I go to them all the time. I'm lazy. So you could be stacked back, so you're actually cutting across your own traffic to get out. And then if you get a jerk like Anthony that says he can't drive and he wants to leave at the bottom.
His wife was going to labor, and he had to jump the line.
And he pulls out and has an accident at the entrance. That whole facility is shut down. All those people in there with only one access point. Nobody can get in, nobody can get out.
Well, I mean, again, we're going through land development now. If it's an item that you want to see addressed, there could be a possibility of an emergency access to Willow, maybe not a full-time access, so that might be an option to help alleviate those.
Somebody from Modwash want to tell me how many cars actually use the vacuum after they get washed?
Approximately a percentage of
Microphone, please.
approximately about the percentage would be about 20% actually use it.
So if I come out of the car wash and I lost that vacuum, can I get right into this lane and get the hell out of there?
No, you would have to go up.
The way it's designed now. But if I came out of the car wash.
Right.
And I lost this vacuum or whatever area I needed for a lane, I could merge into this lane and
Not from that point. Not from that point.
The way it's designed now.
No, we have it. Okay.
It's a hypothetical, sir. It's like back to your old design.
Right here, you have a curb.
Right.
You have a curb that they cannot go across. They would have to come up here and then exit that way.
Right, I'm very concerned about all that traffic in there. And if I got stacked cars there, so you're saying 20% of the people use the vacuum. That means like 60, 70% of the people don't want to stand in that line where people are backing out of the vacuum slots and more traffic's going. But if they can get out of the car wash and cut right into this line to go through the exit process.
Oh, I see what you're saying, to add an exit, okay.
It's a mess. It's a traffic mess. I realize that PennDOT has created a little hardship here, but they're doing it for safety reasons. I like the movement of the entries further down on Linden, but I personally have concerns about that. And everything that we went through, well, zoning was just for the use, correct, Paul?
Yes, and, right, first time it was for use, it was,
3 uses on 2 parcels.
yes, correct.
Two
And
uses on
then
one
they
parcel.
had to come back, and we realized it was split zoning,
Right.
commercial and residential, so 3's a charm.
So on top of that also, and I was gonna add to this, but since we're talking about zoning, it's passed, but I'm very unhappy with the 72% proposed maximum impervious coverage on this site too. This entire site is
Paving, correct. And actually, I believe the current impervious, I believe, is 88%. So we were actually reducing that by about 15 or 16%.
I always get that argument, but it's still not right. It's still 12% higher than our ordinance calls for. And one would think, and what I'm going to say you've already done, but.
Especially with the residential zone that.
Right, and as we're developing more, we should supposed to be doing as much better as we could possibly. And I don't know if you have any other stormwater management proposed for this site to make up for that additional 12%.
So actually, I believe Al might be the one to answer that. But yeah, just for just a clarification, the greenery that we're adding is actually directly abutting the residential areas, and we're adding buffering that wasn't there before in terms of some landscaping. But I think Al can provide some detail as to the exact stormwater we're putting on property where there's really not much there currently. Al?
Yeah, Al Busher, Beal Companies, engineer, civil engineer on this one. We have right now 3 subsurface systems, proposed infiltration systems, so we're handling it underground.
Correct. And it's, we'll get through this, I guess, with land development, but it's substantial to cover.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably, if you look, it's around the Take 5, the vertical piece there parallel to Willow. We have a section along the Easton Road, and then we have a section actually in the mud wash parking lot by the vacuum stalls.
Okay.
So it's spread out a bit.
Okay. Thank you.
I personally am concerned about a single exit, and if an emergency exit could be created with a parking spot, you know, as an alternative. I realize it's a parking spot, but if you have to get cars out of there, you know, if there's an accident at that location or anything like that, I think we need an alternative for exit. And if it's on Willow, I'm okay with that, because it's an alternative only.
Mm-hmm. Sure, kind of like an emergency sort of thing.
This is our traffic engineer. You've heard of it earlier.
One of the things that was in our short review of the revised was the Willow Ave exit, and the comment from PennDOT was the possibility of left turns off 611 southbound. One of our suggestions was looking at modifying the island on 611 to physically restrict. Right now, it's pretty wide open.
Oh, right.
You know, kind of bring it out and kind of make it only for the left, northbound.
I saw that.
You know, and maybe we can maintain that Willow Ave access.
Do you have more parking than is required? I'm trying to read the table you have in these plans, and it's a little confusing as to.
Well, they count where the cars are.
Parking required says, yeah, we're right on it.
You're right on. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, so we would need to do a little bit of rethinking in order to lose a spot and provide that exit. But again, one of the reasons why we're here is to try to get this feedback and this input, and we would imagine that we're going to do something similar.
Okay, so where's an employee park right now?
So right now, so obviously Take 5, there's plenty of parking that we anticipate being used, and there's also a few spots up here as well.
So if a spot going out the Willow can be designated as an employee spot, you can make that an emergency exit when you need to improvise.
If that works for your township engineer and township traffic
Well,
engineer.
I'm not saying that we are encouraging the Willow Avenue exit, but we need another place to get people out if we have to. Now, our traffic engineer did identify, you know, things that could be done on Easton Road, you know, to maintain that Willow Avenue exit.
No, and we appreciate that, and I think that's something that we're definitely going to run by PennDOT. Unfortunately, obviously, it's a short turnaround from when we submitted the revised plans for your review by the township traffic engineer from when we received that to tonight. But that is something, and I understand what we're saying here, because I believe the meeting comes down to where my pointer is. So if we extend that down a little further, then that would still allow vehicles to turn, I guess, left from northbound, but it doesn't allow left from southbound. And
they have to be able to turn left on the northbound.
Yeah, of course. But the southbound is what we're trying to restrict. So I understand that, and that might be something that we can discuss with PennDOT to see if we can.
And the southbound is already restricted, left-hand turn.
Yeah, and there obviously, yeah,
But there's just nothing there to.
There's a sign. Yeah, no,
Okay.
no physical.
Jerks everywhere, making turns.
Yeah,
I think there was
Yeah.
a sign. The sign's down more than it's up.
yeah.
I wonder why. All right,
Yeah.
so where do we go from here?
So what I would leave it up to the discretion of the committee. I guess the two options here would be, we can kind of go back to the drawing board and maybe make some tweaks in order to follow some of the committee suggestions and make some changes to the plan. You can review it again at your next agenda. Or, obviously, armed with the input that we received here tonight, we can make some changes and proceed through land development where, for better or for worse, obviously, we still have quite a ways to go. I know the last time we came before you, we received some input, we made some changes before going to the zoning hearing board. We did not come back here a second time to, I know you have busy agendas, and I'm not sure if
You guys been pretty busy. I've seen you, been here a lot.
Yeah, and look, we do value your feedback, and we do take that into consideration, as I think everybody can tell from the last time we were here. So we're going to do that moving forward, but I'll leave it to the committee's discretion if you'd like to see us back here in order to evaluate some of the changes that we make following tonight.
Who from your group would either be knowledgeable with the traffic part of it or the operations side? Who would be the best person?
Operations is Bill Hall.
Okay.
Traffic is Eric.
Okay, whichever. Do you not see that one entrance there or the top coming out of the back, both of those spots? Do you not see that there could be a problem? Or, I'm just asking, I mean, all three of us.
First of all,
thought so.
he's the operations guy, and we're talking about traffic.
Yeah, but he's in the field, just like
all right.
you were with Aqua, you know what goes on.
I mean, with all due respect and all honesty, I haven't seen a serious situation like that. Because they move them through that car wash, through the tunnel rather quickly. So I don't see maybe 5-7 seconds where, you're stopped, but everything just keeps on moving, especially where you have the membership lane, where they're just literally just taking a scan of the barcode, the sticker that you have on your windshield, and you're just moving along. It's just like an easy pass type of situation.
But they gotta get there first.
I understand that. But what I'm saying is that the water flows downhill. So I mean, as it's going into the tunnel, it's moving in.
We don't have an issue with
Getting in, it's getting
the
out.
20 cars that are staged.
Right.
We're talking about a Saturday morning, 65, 70 degrees, and there's 100 cars that want to get a car wash at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, I got to defer to what I've seen, and I haven't seen that. I've got to be honest with you.
And what we'll do is we'll supply Anton with the information that we've collected. I know his firm in other municipalities has reviewed that and accepted that stacking data. So I'm happy to provide that.
Okay.
All joking aside, with Anthony, this is one of the highest rated accident places we have between Blair Mill and the Turnpike in Upper Road.
That's why they want to be there.
That's
50,000 cars.
accident rated. That's what I'm worried about, is that with one entrance, knowing it is a very high accident rate for the township.
Yeah, and to give you a sense of where we are, we submitted a scoping application to PennDOT, and that's all that's been completed. They've given us feedback. That's why we went back to the drawing board on the access. We now have to perform, we'll resubmit our scoping application, but we have to do a full traffic study that will be reviewed by Anton and PennDOT in conjunction with this. And we'll include the stacking information, crash data will be looked at as well.
Yeah, I think your points were really good ones, because there's two things there. One is, we don't want this corridor to fail. And we also don't want your business to fail because you don't understand the corridor. You don't understand the amount of traffic that's gonna happen here and that's gonna be moving in and out of your site. So taking that information and really accessing what PennDOT has in place and what these gentlemen here are providing as feedback to what happens here on Easton Road, I think will help you have a more successful product at the end. Because your experience in other locations is helpful, but obviously we all know that experience in one place doesn't always transfer.
Translate to the next.
Right.
And all of us will want to see a secondary, just an emergency one.
Yeah.
Maybe a chain across it, but it's a parking space or whatever. Just with that, I'm surprised we don't automatically have that. We ask for it all the time, come on, the second egress. But we would have no problem wherever you can fit it. So, and we want, I think we all want the project. It's just a matter of getting it right for traffic, that we don't have the accidents, and that you're still successful. We all like the project.
No, and we obviously appreciate you taking the time to review it yet again and to provide this feedback. So we do appreciate it. And I'm not sure if the committee would like us back here again. Otherwise, obviously, whatever revisions we make, we're going to be submitting them to Paul's office, and the township will have copies.
So while your team is here, do you have any other questions about the land development process beyond this?
I don't.
Trip counts?
I don't want to speak on behalf of my team, but I think we're pretty good along the way, and obviously Paul's been incredibly helpful in making sure this, despite the fact that there are various forces that want to steer us off track, Paul's doing a good job keeping us on the rails a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Sure, so we'll continue with the land development review, and when, we haven't had our staff review meeting yet with the applicants because this PennDOT scope, or the scoping project that went before PennDOT, this took priority, obviously, so they kind of held off on anything else until they could get this in front of all you, and then, so like I said, we'll just continue with the review and have a staff meeting, and then hopefully get them before the CDC again with their full land development plan in a couple months.
Okay, sounds very good.
All right.
Any comments from the public?
Yeah, Brian, I know you're going to say something. You got to come up here.
I guess my primary comment would be, why don't you add an extra body oil change? I mean, right now, there's a total of 6 ramps to empty that property. All right. You're reducing it to 1, so really, if you add another one, you got 2, all right, with a positive gain. But if you look where that oil change building is, you can put an exit ramp there. That's it. I'm talking right in here.
Yep.
That's 611.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have, and I agree, there's 2 openings, 3
Yeah,
openings now.
I see it, but
But it's
PennDOT, and it's too close to winter, so I'll give you the reasons why not. It's PennDOT, You can slide over and talk to Anton, he'll tell you about the separation from that street, people turning right in and cars coming out.
Well, that's because the airplane landed in that.
You did.
All right, thank you so
very
much. We appreciate you having us.
We're looking forward to seeing you in a couple months.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's hold off on the item B on old business. Let's go down to redevelopment, and let's talk about the Spring Hill Suites at 3900 Commerce. Good evening and welcome.
I made some copies of our handout. So I think there was some mix-up in what was on the website.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Mark Kaplan, and I represent the owners of the Spring Hill Suites. We were before you, I believe, the end of November, and we presented our initial ideas to convert the Spring Hill Suites, which is a suites hotel, into an apartment. I told you that my client had bought the facility, the hotel, out of a bankruptcy, and would probably run it either way, as a hotel or as apartments, but it really doesn't make sense to run this property as a hotel. There's just not enough demand. There are a number of hotels in the area, as you know. We count like 5 in the immediate area. We don't think any of them are doing particularly well. So we presented to you this idea, and there was a number of comments, and then we had some, Paul and I and Sean and I had conversations after that meeting. And one of the major thing that we see that you asked us to look into was the possibility of creating something like a cafe or a restaurant in the hotel. So Seth Shapira from Barton's done a lot of work. We've taken some time to look at some other situations to make sure that we think that this will make sense. And we've come up with what we call a cafe. I'm going to let Seth, who's done all the hard work and doing all the drawings, to walk you through it. I think you'll see that we've also sharpened the pencil on exactly what the amenities are in the facility. We've added or made more detail a box-like of one of typical apartment, so that you can see how it would work. So unless you've got questions for me, I'd rather bring Seth up here and let him walk you through this. And then we can talk about whether this interests you or not. And if it does, how do we move forward from here?
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Seth Shapiro from Barton Partners. A lot of these drawings are going to look familiar to you. There's some small changes to these that I will take you through now. This is an aerial site plan of the facility. It is right now a 155 suite only hotel. And what we're proposing is to turn that into 155 studio only apartments. There are 172 parking spaces on site. Being that they're all studio apartments, we are assuming that's one parking space per studio, which makes sense, which leaves 17 spaces over for cafe or staff. And as Mark had mentioned, that was one of the big comments. Could you add some kind of mixed use to this facility? So actually real quick, let's go to the next page. So obviously this is actually exactly the same. This is just an example of how we're taking what is sort of a branded hotel and turning it into something that looks more like an apartment building. And here is a rendering of the same. And as you can see, indeed, we were able to put a small coffee shop / cafe in the base of the building. And the way that works also answers another one of the questions that everybody had, which was, what are the amenities in this building? This is actually the ground floor of the building right now that serves as the lobby. I believe they serve a breakfast in the hotel. So we have reconfigured this to have the sort of the state-of-the-art amenities that you see in other luxury apartment communities, with a lobby, a club room, a game room, a robust mail room and package room, even a sports simulator and a conference room and lots of tenant storage. Most importantly, what we're doing these days is doing lots and lots and lots of remote work areas. So we have that, we have a fitness room, and then something that we have actually never done, but the building already has it, is an indoor pool. All of that actually was proposed last time, but now we actually have inserted this cafe That's almost 1,000 square feet and would be open to the public. It also happens to be located right by the outdoor patio space. So we actually think it's actually quite a good location for that kind of amenity. And of course, again, that would be open to the general public. And as there is an increased density of residential in this area, we think it's a good use. The other question that we had last.
Let me interrupt you. Do me a favor.
Could you use the microphone, please? You can sit down and hold it if you want. You don't have to stay there.
I would like you to walk the board, members of the committee, through the first floor. You mentioned a lot of things, and I think they deserve a little bit more attention so that it can sort of soak in. You and I understand it, Max understands it, the board's seeing it for the second time. And I think it's amazing how much there is here in amenities. And I'd like to be sure that the board gets the full impact of that.
Sure, actually, let me grab that, and I'm gonna go up to the screen to do this, if that's okay. So, as I mentioned, this is the existing lobby area of the hotel right now, where there's reception, and I believe they do serve a breakfast there or a breakfast buffet. And we have reconfigured that into what you would typically see as an amenity or a club room or a clubhouse space in an apartment community. So there's the lobby where the little hand is. To the left of that is the club room. It's sort of like a living room and a game room. That's just an active hangout space. And then, of course, there's the central mail room and package room. That sits across from the leasing center, which is on the other side of the lobby. And then a conference room right over here. This is the elevator that exists today. Because the apartments are small, although quite frankly, we're doing this in just about all of our communities now, we have a robust storage area for lease for people. Over here is a sport simulator, sort of the more advanced version of a Wii type of system. And then one of the things that we're now doing in every one of our communities is the pet spa, which is right here. A place to take your dog, you can wash your dog. I don't think cats enjoy being washed. So over here, again, as I mentioned before, is sort of the work share space, the remote work area. Very, very important. I would say 10 or 15 years ago, when Mark and I were doing these presentations, we would always be showing some kind of theater or media room. We don't do that anymore. Everybody's got a 70-inch TV in their apartment. Now we do these remote work areas, and this is something that's become even more important post-COVID. And then, of course, the fitness room. And then lastly, the fitness room actually is served by some changing rooms and bathrooms. And of course, as I mentioned before, it's already in the building. To have a swimming pool, an indoor swimming pool in an apartment community is pretty unique. And so we have that using the outdoor area as a sun deck, which leaves the last thing, which was the request that we had last time, which is for that cafe, which sits right here, which has an exterior entrance as well as an entrance from the interior, storage area, a little kitchen area. We look at that as more of a coffee shop. Put this back here.
Would you like us to hold our questions?
I am almost done, so. The last thing that I wanted to show you is that the most common unit type. There were some questions about, what can you get in these, 400 square foot or slightly less spaces as a studio apartment, which is actually a pretty typical size for a studio. So we went ahead and did this rendering here. This is the most common type of unit in the building, and actually you can see the color blue on the left is the existing sort of unit, and you can see how many of those blue squares in the building there are. So the larger piece of this drawing is sort of a three-dimensional view of how this unit would lay out, with the little kitchen off to the left, a stacked washer and dryer to the right. You have a living area, you have a full bathroom, and then you have your bedroom area as well as a walk-in closet. So that's sort of how the units work. The rest of this presentation, which you also have in front of you, are other plans of how the various hotel rooms would be converted to units. We didn't go ahead and render those. This is the most common one because we were asked to do that. And I think that's really about all we have in terms of the questions. Obviously, we'll need parking. Parking is an issue from all studio apartments. 1 per unit should be totally fine. Again, which that leaves us 17 space left over for the cafe, which we also think is probably more than adequate. We're not really proposing any changes to the site plan other than removing the existing porte cochere. So with that, happy to answer questions.
Can I ask one question? In your pro forma, what are you assuming the rents are going to be for these?
$1,200 a month.
And that's about 300 square feet?
No, it's closer to I think it says there, let's see.
391.
392 or something?
391.
440, but I mean.
This one is just sub 400, but I think the average for the whole is somewhere just north of 400, but this is the most common unit.
Okay. Would you have any one bedrooms or are they all studios?
They're all studios.
Okay.
You good, Matt? You good?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for all the detail. This is a great advancement from the last time that you were here. Starting with the parking question. So you've got 1 space per unit. You have 17 left over, and that 17 is to accommodate staff for the building and public accessing the cafe.
Correct.
Is that sufficient number? Is that a sufficient number for the needs of this facility? Or are you going to have to look for either relief or a redesign of the parking?
So I think from a demand perspective, it is absolutely sufficient. If this community were 100% leased, which the parking would be at 1 per unit, would be at 4 o'clock in the morning when the cafe is closed. So you'll never see the parking lot actually 100% full. And also, I think from a staff perspective, I think we're talking maybe 2 people, maybe 3. So from a 900 square foot coffee shop, 15, 16 or 14 cars, that's a lot.
So that's staff for I know that these are living units and not a hotel, so the staff for the facility itself
Correct.
is completely different. But what is the staff quantity for the office, for maintenance, for all that other stuff that would be added to that 17?
And visitors.
And visitors, right? So you've got 17 left, you've got 3 people working at the cafe, that takes you down to 14, right? It's simple math. And then, so you got 14 spaces left for visitors, maintenance workers, staff for the facility, all that other stuff.
You're assuming everybody's home.
Let me try and, because I've looked at this
Yeah.
a number of times. A couple of years ago, when another client was proposing an apartment project at the Fort Washington train station, we had McMahon go out, just as Seth said, at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday night, which would be the highest demand of parking. And that was a couple of apartments in White Marsh. It was all the new stuff. There was some that was in Conshohocken, so there was a train factor in there at 4 o'clock in the morning with basically a mix of half ones and half twos, maybe a couple of threes, but basically 50-50. The ratio was 1.2 parking spaces per apartment. Recently, I was involved in a development in the Lehigh Valley, and I tried to use that study. And the people in the Lehigh Valley said, well, we're different than where you are in southeastern Pennsylvania. We had the same study done, same type of units, and the ratio was the same, 1.2, maybe 1.3. When you talk about 1 parking space per bedroom, if we were in a 50-50 development, that would be 1.5 per apartment unit. The bottom line is that is really over parking. We've got all these places over parked. And I don't think that I don't think that you can start to say how many spaces are needed for the staff, because during the day, there's a multitude of parking spaces. Look, we think that this is probably more parking than is needed, but obviously, if we're going to rent 155 units, we need to give everybody a parking space.
Yeah, no, your logic is sound. I just want this to be something that everybody's thinking about, because we're at a conceptual stage here, and there's more to this parking field than just the residents. So just keep that in mind, because that's something that I'm sure will be questioned again later, and having your reasoning and.
Is it later?
The path. Well, this is conceptual at this
I
point.
understand that, but what is our code for parking right now?
While he's looking that up, are there any other facilities that are built in our region that are 150 studio apartments that you're aware of?
I'm not, and we had, yeah, I was going to say this. We had Max's assistant go through all the parking, all of the areas. I think we came up with two that were sort of kind of close. Let me get my.
So is it fair to say this would be one of the first of this kind in the area?
It would be, but don't take my word for it. Go on Google and punch in conversion of hotels to apartments. You'll see YouTube presentations. You'll see people that are in the business of selling their services to to hotel owners to convert them. It's being done. It's being done all over. But it doesn't work for all the hotels.
Right.
It only works for the suites hotels, because you've already got the kitchen in there and you got the bedroom component. You can't do it with just a hotel room. So there's not a lot of it.
Well,
there is a lot of it nationwide.
Well, from my perspective, from a staff perspective, what would be very helpful is if you could send us, and in fact, it doesn't even matter anywhere in the country, if you could send us 2 or 3 names of developments. And what I would be interested in is calling, or even Paul and I would be calling our colleagues in those areas and see how they're actually working from a parking perspective and other kinds of concerns. There might be traffic,
Well,
because I mean, we're making an assumption that these are one person apartments. I assume some of them are going to be 2 people apartments. And is there?
King size beds, Matt.
Right, right. And I mean, I'd be curious to know, do you have limits on the number of people that can live in these facilities? What if you had a family of 4, 2 kids and 2, I mean, it'd just be interesting to see, since it's so new, it would be helpful to kind of know.
We're not looking to rent these to multiple people.
Well, I understand. Because it's, I mean, you yourself just said these are brand new, but if it would be, I think for the committee's sake, it'd be very helpful to try and find facilities similar to this anywhere in the country to see how they actually work on the ground.
I'll go back online. I'll have one of my people go back online. There was so much, it was overwhelming how much of it. I'd have to find, I ended up with a YouTube presentation. So, yeah, I will be glad to get that information. Max, somebody, one of your people had given me a list of articles 4 or 5 months ago that this is going on, we think, all over the country for the same reason that we have right here now. I don't have to tell you, with all the remote, you don't get in your car. You don't go. You can have a meeting. We do it all the time. You can have 10 people on a Zoom that takes you a couple hours to put together. And if you went to put them all together in one room, it would take you months. So it's understandable why a certain kind of business travel is down. But I don't want to pontificate, I'll get.
Okay, we appreciate that.
We'll get you the stuff, and
Okay.
you'll see yourself.
You have that number, Paul?
Yeah, so it's 2 spaces per dwelling unit, but in the C2 district, if this would qualify, which it doesn't because it's not within 2,500 feet of a rail line, you can reduce the parking by up to 25% by conditional use from the Board of Commissioners after you demonstrate that providing less than the 2 spaces per dwelling unit will meet the needs of the complex, so.
I will get you the 2 studies that we
Yeah,
had.
well, like, so you're parking deficient based on our code.
On your code,
Okay,
absolutely
right, okay.
parking.
We know that.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you listening to us and coming back with the few things we asked for. I'm a little disappointed with the cafe space. I like it, I like the whole idea, but there's no food prep area.
No, there is.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But it's more of a grab and go type place or well, the way it is looked at right now, right?
Yeah, it's more grab and go and coffee shop.
It's not a restaurant.
It's not a restaurant. No.
We're not going to know exactly what it is until we find somebody to operate it.
And I understand why you have crammed multiple amenities into that first floor. And I personally like that. I was looking for more of a draw from the community for foot traffic. There's a lot of residents in the area that don't have that on their site, and there's a considerable amount of business in the area that might, produce foot traffic that would come. But what you have here is, another amenity for people that already live there. Now, maybe the drawback was that you couldn't create more parking for that, but I'm looking at, a lot of business in the area and even more already determined residential in the area that doesn't have that amenity.
So, and this is in Seth's Ballywick, but the small units, or what we're seeing in small units, people want to be out of there a good part of the time, and that's why you go into one of...
So you said it, like people are going out during the day. So
Where they're
using the
working in these working spaces.
Right, they're using the amenities.
And I personally, I see a need for this community for a place for people that don't live there to come for lunch, that kind of thing.
I think we mentioned it last time too, because you've got a whole corridor of other apartment complexes up and down that road. And so it's a prime location if you have that type of amenity at this space, because it's at the head of the entryway basically to our apartment district, which I think is where your brain.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
Yeah, no, and we don't disagree. We just think that the use is more likely to be like a coffee shop or a bagel shop or something like that, where people can walk from those various communities, whether it be Willow Point or the community across the street, so to this. When you start to get bigger and more robust than that, then we would be concerned about drawing from further, and then we probably do have a parking problem.
Right.
And I think you've probably already checked this, Paul, but we don't have any sort of minimum size dwelling units in the township.
Well, we do, and that's really what's going to drive the number of occupants in these rooms. And I think, Seth, in your earlier presentation a couple months ago, I think you alluded to the minimum square footage required out of the IBC.
Do we, from the building code?
Correct.
So is there,
It covers it.
I'm sorry?
They covered it?
So do you happen to know off the top of your head
I
what?
think, I don't have it all, I think you had it on your code analysis.
We did a robust code analysis, because when we actually were first approached by this, it wasn't actually me, it was one of our architectural project managers, who's a code specialist, really dove in, and we discovered, hey, this actually works pretty well. So we have it, and we're happy to share that with you too, because it was.
What is the minimum size?
I don't remember offhand what the minimum size is, but we're well over it.
And do we have a minimum or a maximum number of residents that can live within a certain space?
Sure, like I said, it's governed by the size of the unit, so you're not gonna legally put 4 people in one of the efficiencies.
You can't or can?
You cannot.
Can you put 3?
I mean, like I said,
Not with a dog or a cat. And a 70-inch TV.
Look, I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but the only way that I could see multiple people in here is if this was, some portion of this was student housing. And we really don't want to be in the student housing business.
Okay. You guys have done your market analysis. You think you have a good product here. You heard a little more from us.
You finishing up?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, I'm not in favor of it. I just don't foresee, I'm looking at that small of a unit for the whole project. I don't believe the parking will be enough. We have approved 1.2 spaces at other places for, let's say.
TODs.
TODs, and still don't have enough parking there. Like you said, college parking, those places, we thought one would be enough. Didn't work, and those people, they all didn't drive in the beginning, now they do. So now their overflow is into another lot. Here you have no overflow, there's nowhere to go. For those things is what my personal preference is. Just, those are the reasons I don't really like it. I know, they're good with it, and that's okay. But just my opinion. Just a very small unit that I don't see healthy or whatever for a whole year there. Nowhere else. They got to drive somewhere, so they're all going to have cars. There's nothing around. So everybody is driving. So now you got 100 and whatever the number was. 155 right off the bat, and that's it.
No maximum.
Okay, 155 apartments.
155 apartments.
Right.
And a maximum of 155 cars. We are not going to rent, Max, you're not going to rent this to multiple people, or is that up in the air?
Mark, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Max, come up here.
I lived in similar places like this when I was young. It was not only me in that apartment.
But it
so
wasn't
there were
good.
2 cars there.
Yeah, I remember the place when you were young.
And these are some of the things that I just don't think the parking's there. I don't feel comfortable with it, but that's, like I said, they are some.
So are you saying you're gonna have a requirement of each unit can only have 1 car?
I don't know if that requirement is practical. We could make a requirement like that. I think it's going to be governed more than by requirements by who actually lives there. So I think the way the units are designed, it's not going to be for more than 1 person. There could be exceptions. I do agree with you. There could be couples that live there, but you definitely won't get anybody with 3 people, as you mentioned, a kid. There's nowhere to put another bed. We look at
I'm
the
okay
design.
with that, but I mean,
But a couple, like somebody mentioned, you could have a double bed. You could probably put 2 single beds in there, and that's not impossible. I think it will be a very small percentage just because of the size of the units and the way the layout is. It's great for 1 person. Like I mentioned last time, we have a very similar product. It's in the city of Philadelphia, so obviously there's public transport. Very similar size units, almost identical, and that really, you could call it inspiration from our perspective on this. And we have, I don't want to say with certainty 100%, but a very high percentage of single people and not couples living in the units. There are some couples, so to your point, it won't be 100% singles. You get some couples that will live there, not long-term, but you could get single people who want to live by themselves. They will live there for multiple years.
You're talking about Brewery Town.
Correct. The hub.
Right, and public transportation is all over the place.
Correct.
So our concerns are the parking, couples. So when you say 20% of this place has couples living in it.
I agree, it's possible. If you would have asked me, I would have said it's probably more like 10%, because it's more like the outlier than the than the norm. 20% is probably a high percentage. But I agree with you, there will be some couples living in the units, because it just wouldn't be a good policy to tell people you have to live by yourself. It's just, and it's very difficult to enforce. I mean, you could enforce it, but it's not what we want to be doing. We would open it up to single occupancy and a couple that wanted to live there, unless there was an ordinance of some type that restricted it.
What about a limitation on one car?
Again, we'd be happy to do that. And I think it's very reasonable, just on the nature of the product, where it's small units, studios, one parking spot per person. We could have assigned parking spots that could create that you're only getting one parking spot. So if you're two people with two cars, you're going to have a problem. We could do that. And assigned parking would probably be a good idea over here. Each person has their spot, so they know where, they know where they can come and park, and don't have to go looking for parking in the evening.
It would be very helpful to see how one of these facilities actually works,
In a similar region to our region, right?
Yeah.
Because I appreciate the fact that you have a product in Brewery Town that's successful, and we mentioned it last time you were here too. It is a very, very different geographical area than what we have
There's
here.
a ton of walking going on too,
That's
besides
why
public
when you asked
transportation.
me to bring it in, I didn't want to bring in Brewery Town. That's, we found one, give me 1 second.
In Brewery Town, just for the record, we have nowhere near one parking spot per person. I think, I don't want to say for sure, but we have around 50 parking spots for 250 apartments. It's a very different environment. I definitely agree with that. Here, we would need to have one parking spot minimum per unit.
Maximum.
Well, here you need one per unit.
Right, what I'm saying, you can't have more than one.
Correct.
Parking spot per unit.
And like I said, we're okay restricting that, putting that in a lease if somebody wants
Now,
to lease here.
If that were a requirement for one parking spot per unit, they still have to go to zoning for relief for that, or they get it here?
If I could, I think that if you're in agreement on this, the best way to do this, Alex, the best way I see to do this would be to some kind of overlay. Some kind of overlay for the district that we're in, and it's.
I don't think we're going to try to get an overlay with one parking spot per unit anywhere else in this township.
No.
All right, go ahead.
To get back to your question, Commissioner Stormberg.
The original question was.
Right, in order to reduce the required parking by up to 25%, it's a conditional use before the Board of Commissioners.
Right.
So it's 1.5 then.
And I believe that was what Willow Point was, further up Maryland Road. And I did find the original code analysis when they submitted back in the fall, and it's 200 square feet of gross floor area per occupant.
Right.
Plus an additional one occupant for every 100 additional square feet. So any one of these units could, by code, potentially hold 3-ish people. Right? If they're 400 square feet, you could get not saying people will.
200 per person.
No, it's gross.
200 for one.
For one, and
Plus
then you're allowed
100
an
for,
additional
okay.
person per 100 square feet on top. So if you're at 400 square feet, by code, you're allowed to have 4 people in there. Not saying you will, but it's possible.
I would point out in terms of parking, so, whatever the exact percentage, I was saying.
200 is 1, 300 is 2.
Go ahead. I was saying at 10%, if 10% of people if 10% of the units had 2 cars, what Seth had mentioned is that during the day, you're going to have an empty parking lot. At least half the people are going to be at work. I know we're promoting remote work, but that's not 100%. That's going to be about 50%. So during the day, you're going to have no issues. So when your cafe is open, we're envisioning a cafe or bagel store or something in the direction of Starbucks, there'll be plenty of parking. In the evening, when the cafe will be closed, you'll have that extra 17 parking spots, which really gives you 1.1 approximately per unit. And that's why we felt from a business perspective, it was practical.
So I don't want all this to be negative, right? But I appreciate the adaptive reuse concept. It's great that you're really trying to take a product that is failing and turn it into something that has the potential to be successful. The amount of effort that you've put into studying this and figuring it out and shoehorning so much into what's already here is commendable. I do, however, still, I really want you to understand the neighborhood. I really just don't understand how this type of product will work in this neighborhood. I also see some confusion on my part with how this would function. Like you've got 400 and something units, you're saying, and how many units?
155.
What, sorry, 155 units and one tiny passenger elevator. Like these things just don't make sense to me, and I don't understand. One tiny passenger elevator. So, you know, even somebody bringing a king size bed in, how do they get it up to their units? Like there's just things like that I don't think the concept has been fully reviewed throughout the entire facility. And maybe I'm wrong, and I would be happy to be proven so, Seth, if you have studied these things and have a better understanding of how this works. If one elevator is enough, if there's a service elevator that's not represented on the floor plan, there's just some functionality of this building that still seems screwy to me.
You know, it's something to look at. I do think one elevator is probably enough. Usually we talk about one elevator for 60 units above grade. But this is a little different because there's higher occupancy in those units than in this case.
Yeah.
But there's no sort of code issue regarding that, so.
Yeah, and like I said to the previous applicant who was up here, we're not making these comments because we're trying to be sticklers. We don't want these products to fail, right? And there's some thought processes in here that we just want to make sure that you're having as well.
Well, let me say this. The immediate problem is that we do have a failed product. And we're losing the flag. And I went through that. Every 20 years, Marriott and all of them, they require you to put an inordinate amount of money into it. Mm-hmm. It's probably $5 million to go in here to bring this back to what it was 20 years ago. It's not going to happen because the economics are not there. The demand is not there. So you and my client have that product that we're dealing with. It's not like I've come in here and said, here's a blank piece of ground, right, and we want to do this, and it's out of the ordinary. This is a choice that you've got to make, and we're trying to convince you that this makes the most sense.
Yeah.
I will say, you're an architect, right?
Yes.
We haven't, I think that, I was so pleasantly surprised when Max authorized Seth to do this amount of work on a piece of, on a property where the zoning's not there. I am sure you're right. There's questions about elevators. There's questions about all that stuff. But we can't do a complete architectural set of plans and answer every question at this point.
Totally understood. But so my point in asking these questions, right? And I understand how the process works. You're not going to do this all in schematic design, right? But you're bringing a concept that is novel to this region and trying to sell it to us.
Agreed.
And so the questions we're going to pose to you are going to be questions that challenge your sales pitch, because we're not sure if this works. And right now, for the three of us, I don't think you've convinced anybody that this is a functioning use for this space. I think if you came to us and you said, we're going to take this hotel and we're going to convert it to a series of studios, 1-bedrooms and 2-bedroom apartments, take down some partition walls in between some of these units and have a diversity of sized rental units in here, we wouldn't be having this conversation anymore. We would say, that's great, go for it. Best of luck to you. Have a good time.
And when
this, however, is something that is very challenging for me, and it sounds like it's challenging for my fellow board members as well.
And what you would say to us as an architect, you'd say to us, it would be cheaper to tear the whole thing down and start over than to try and manipulate this building. One of the YouTubes I listened to said exactly that. Now, this was a YouTube guy, so it's not a maven, but if you start to move everything around, and you're gonna have 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, where are you gonna move the stacked bathrooms? And I don't think it'll work.
We both, you made a very astute point. We're both dealing with a failing asset, and we're looking for the best way to make this a successful asset. And the last thing that I want to do is not question a concept that could potentially turn a failing asset into another failing asset. And so I don't want to not question the concept applied to an existing failing asset that could create a new failing asset. And this, to me, I'm not sold that this will be a successful asset. And that's why I'm pushing these questions pretty hard, because I just want to understand that the thought process is something that you and your team has really gone through and understood for our community and for yourselves.
I think Max has to give you some of his background and what he does and how many units he owns. And I would hope that when he does that, you would trust that somebody that's as sophisticated as he is wouldn't do something stupid, that he had an idea that made sense.
Here's a basic analogy when I was even saying with the parking. Tomorrow, we're going to get 6 to 8 inches of snow, Allentown, whatever. Where are you going to put it? You have no parking space. You have nowhere to put it.
Well,
that could sit there on a normal year, 2-3 weeks. And you have nowhere to park because that snow is going to end up in one of these spots. A lot of times, and I ask this question every time we go because I do snowplow. And we end up with places that all of a sudden they got to park off-site because they have nowhere to put it. And I get it, it's only 20 days a year usually, 25 days a year. This year, 0. But on a normal basis, when you're maxed out on parking, that's another.
When are you maxed out on parking? You're only maxed out.
If you're 1 for 1, you only have 17 left and you have a couple friends over.
But you have what?
Couple friends over, let's say 10%, that's 15 friends. Yeah.
But the only time that the parking lots are full are 4 o'clock in the morning when everybody is there.
Snow's not going to wait for the parking lot to empty out.
Okay. Go ahead, Max.
Just to address the snow comment. The hotel does function, it's not always full, but there are times that it's full. If you have a weekend, it used to be more so, but there have been cases where they are full. So the parking is sufficient currently, even if it snows and the hotel's full. I realize it's not full every day because it's a hotel, but it does have weekends and different seasons where it's much full, like in the summer. The summer weekends, we could have occupancy in the high 90s. Unfortunately, in the winter, it could be down to the 30s, but it does function and it does have snow. And they do find, if you look at the site, there are some green areas, etc., where they'll obviously have to pile up snow on the site. That's never been a problem. I haven't owned a hotel for very long, but since we've never heard of that problem. Management's been there for many years before us. It's the same management, Marriott management company. I haven't heard that as being a major concern. But
I can tell you 2 places in Willow Grove, we went 1 bedroom for 1 parking spot and it didn't work.
Understood. I understand.
In Willow Grove.
Max, why do you think this will work?
So if Seth, you could pull up the comp page, we looked at just in terms of the area, we've done the same concept as I mentioned, more in an area that had public transport, and we recognize that's very different and the parking ratios were different. But if you look at the list of apartment buildings that we pulled up, we looked for apartment buildings that had small studios and large numbers. And the one that I really would point out is Doylestown, which is called Center Square Apartments. It's 350 apartments, of which 172 are studios. Us, as from a business perspective, we don't see a big difference if there would only be 172 studios, or if there happens to be another 170-something units at the property that are 1s and 2s. There are still a demand for 172 studios. That property, I actually called them today, asked them if I can tour it, and they said, tour the property, and they said they have nothing available as of today. So their 172 units are fully leased, and people are happy to live in studios. We look at that as market research, and we picked up two other similar properties which don't have the same very large number, 172, but the other two properties, one has 28, one has 67. These are large number of studios. We do recognize that they're ones and twos, but from our perspective, the people living in the studios are not living there because there's also people in ones and twos. If those ones and twos would be in a separate building, which they're not, I still think that studio market would be there based on what I'm seeing in the market. In fact, the property in Jacksonville Green, which I recognize only has 28 studios, but they have a waiting list, according to the manager today, of 50 people that are looking for studio apartments.
Let me make sure that they understand where this is.
I know exactly where it is.
You know where it is.
My business was next door.
Yeah, and it was converted.
Yep.
It's partially new and partially converted 6-7 years ago.
They had to buy extra properties for parking.
I'm sorry.
Across the street, after they did it, they had to buy extra properties for parking.
These are redevelopments that were redone, similar to what we're doing. They just were redeveloping apartment buildings and adding units, breaking up larger units to smaller units, whatever their exact considerations. But the end result was properties that have large number of studios that are doing very well. Even the rents in Doylestown and their amenities, in my opinion, are functional but weak. They're not what I would envision this type of product having, a rich amenity package, and their rents are strong and the occupancy is strong. Again, that doesn't address your parking issue, but in terms of the viability, which I think you had mentioned, we believe the product is very viable. We think that there'll be a very big demand, and
so we hear that there's a market for studio apartments, 400 square feet. Got that. We have a parking challenge here. So that's something you have to deal with. You want to roll the marbles and say, yeah, I can rent out these units, and that's your business model. You have to, the biggest challenge here is dealing with the parking.
Do you know what the parking numbers are for those developments?
so I don't have real information as to what their ratio is. I could look into that, and it'll be hard to determine because they're not only studios, so we'd have to understand what, if their parking ratio, as an example, was 1.5, we don't know if that's because their one bedrooms really all need two, or it would be very hard to determine because it's not a purely studio product.
That was my next question.
McMahon. It's McMahon, that's what I thought. Well, I go to Joe DeSantis and ask him to take the two studies that he's done for my clients, try and hone in on what we're talking about here, and do a traffic study, and let your traffic study, we all know the straightest shooter in the entire world, to come in here and tell you whether the parking works or not.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Can you clarify, Max, just because I'm reading this chart, the units that you have listed, the 350, 85, and 266 for your comps, are those all studio numbers?
No, there's two lines. The first line is the total units at the property. So if you just look at the first one, which is ours, there's 155 units. The second one has 350 units.
Oh, God, okay, I see that
If you go
line
down, it's focused on the studios. So the fourth line is number of studios. The one proposed at Willow Grove is 155. The one for Center Square is 172. So approximately almost exactly 50% of the property is studios. And that's why that property to us really is our poster boy for a property that works with a very large number of studios.
Yeah.
They've managed to rent out 172 studios. And I think our location is very comparable from it not being, there's no public transport over there. It's similar. I'm sure you all know, what it is from a geographic perspective. It looks very similar.
Yeah, the Doylestown one's an interesting model because you're walking distance from a grocery store, you're walking distance from a bunch of other amenity spaces, you're walking distance from Main Street, Doylestown, so you have all that strip of restaurants and bars and things to do. And again, your property here in Willow Grove doesn't have that.
I'm not sure that I looked at where that was. I think it's off near the courthouse down the hill. I may be wrong.
There's I'm looking at it on Google Maps right now.
Okay.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff.
There's a ton of amenities walking distance from that property in Broad Street. I'm familiar with it.
But yeah, so again, just another thing, like, I just want to make sure that we're looking at this.
Sure, so I think what I'm hearing is the big challenge is parking.
Yeah.
If the parking ratio was good, it seems like there'd be more support. So I think what Mark was saying was, is we need to work out what is that correct ratio. I think we're all in agreement that it doesn't have the same ratio as 1 or 2 bedrooms. It's not going to be mostly couples. It's going to have a certain percentage, and I think our question is what percentage? I think we're all in agreement that this is a product that will have cars and will not be for people that are walking just based on its location. And I wanted to be successful also, and I would like to hear some kind of either a process or a suggestion as to what kind of parking ratio we need to accomplish.
I'm not as challenged with the 400 square feet of living space. I've seen it in Center City, I've seen it in New York City. That's a giant apartment in New York City. Expensive though, it ain't getting it for $1,200.
And it would be $3,000 too.
Yeah, but the parking is the obstacle. You know,
So like I mentioned, we're open to some flexibility on that if it would mean either trying to work out, sitting with an architect and seeing, were there certain rooms that could be combined to make larger units, thereby bringing down the total unit number and thereby bringing up the parking ratio. We looked at it and said we have a 1.1 ratio, which basically said 90% of people will be singles and 10% will be couples. And I think that's the question. Is it going to be 10% couples, 20% couples? And, you know, what's the resulting parking ratios?
So our job, Max, if the board's okay, because if they're not okay, they're going to tell us not to waste our money. I'm sure they would do that. But I want to hire their traffic engineer because I would hire them anyway because they're really professional. And we've got to find the right places so it's apples to apples. And we're going to have a tough time doing that because the closest we found is 350 units, half of which are singles.
It's up to you.
Yeah. So if that's, look, is it worth our going forward and doing that? I mean, because you've said that you're okay with the 400, you can live with that.
I've seen
Kip is.
I'm challenged, but with the whole thing, I'm challenged.
Well, I'm going to get some more, I'm going to get some of that information.
Until you can fix the parking, you shouldn't come back, okay? You give us a better parking ratio or some kind of, you know, car per unit requirement. You know, we can't just do that and force people that want to come visit the park somewhere else. That doesn't work.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. It wouldn't work, we wouldn't get the tenants. Okay, look, we've got a challenge. We've gotten through most of it. Everybody likes what you're proposing to do. I'm sure that if it worked, they'd much rather have this than what they have now. So we gotta get you some more information. And it ain't over till, it's over. So nobody's committing anything, and we'll figure out how do we get you some more information.
I was just going to ask you, right?
There is a second elevator.
I see it on the dog leg.
I see it on the.
And that brings up my last question for you, Seth. What is that dog leg? Is it all units?
Yeah.
On the first floor?
On the first floor, yeah.
Okay, so your amenity is only that lefternmost
Right. the
zone,
amenity
really,
is only-
up to the middle about.
Yeah, I think it's about there.
Okay, and then everything off of that is additional units on the ground floor.
Correct.
So we solved the two elevator? I didn't know whether we were going to be able to solve that.
As you know, K-Town building turns the corner, stick an elevator in.
Yeah.
Nothing else to do there.
Yeah, because the way that the illustrative plan is done, it's sort of like, I don't know,
Yeah,
my
it
brain
implies
just
it's
stopped
just that.
working. It was just that part, and I forgot about the whole other dog leg. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Is there any comment from the public that wanted to add to this? Thank you. Okay. Well, Okay, we're going to back up and, Mr. Elsier, we're going to talk about automated trash collection. I don't know.
Are you ready?
I'm born ready.
Supposed to introduce it in the 27th.
Okay, in October of 2022, I presented basically similar packet with information that stated when we began automated recycling, some workman's comp statistics that we had, how many employees we work through the sanitation division collecting trash at each household, and why automation would reduce collection of worker comp injuries, reduce the compensation cost and disability claims. Added a couple new statistics. Before we went, in 2019, we went automated. Before then, we used to collect recyclables by hand with little small containers. And at that time, we had 2 recycling trucks that went out. We also had 2 rear load trash trucks that went out that collected paper. We sent 2 trucks out each day that collected paper. So we had 4 trucks that went out, 2 with just drivers, and which, Commissioner Peruzzi, I don't think you were living in the neighborhood at the time. They would physically get out, go out, pick it up by hand, and dump it into their truck. So it was 1 guy on each truck. Paper was collected. We had 2 trucks with 2 men on the back.
Workers.
Yes, 2 workers on the back. At that time, from January 1st, 2014 to 9/17/19, when we began automation, our workman's comp claims were $766,000. From the time that we went automated in 19 to 2022, they went down to 108,000. That's the compensation claims, not our premiums that we paid, obviously, but that's the amount of the claims. Again, what are the benefits of automated waste collection? Reduced risk of worker injury, because we're limiting the lifting and handling of the waste. Decrease in workers' compensation claims and insurance costs. Improve employee morale, employee retention, employee relationships with management. Right now, to this day, actually this week, Park and Rec's hiring for a new park maintenance worker, they're called, in Park and Rec. We're hiring laborers, we're training laborers on the highway side and on the sanitation side. And, we're putting time in with them during paving, during plowing season, and then they no longer want to collect trash. So they are moving over to Park and Rec, where they don't do the trash, and we're losing them basically on our highway side, after we train them for 4 or 5 years. Decrease in labor costs, since fully automated requires only 1 driver. Increased productivity, basically, the job gets done quicker. What's my percentage? That percentage in here. They're 37.5% quicker than the manned trash trucks. The automated recycling trucks doing the same route as a trash. If there was 150 residents or units in the neighborhood, they did the same 150 and they did it in 37.5% quicker, even though they're going up and down the road. With the automation, it's a lot quicker. Advantages for the township would be improved collection efficiency, reducing employee injuries, lower turnover rate, again, compensation, reduced rodent problems, cleaner, healthier neighborhoods, and now it's going to be volume-based containers, because you're not going to have multiple bags of trash or large dressers out at one time. Those larger pickups are going to be, they're going to call us, and they're going to be scheduled for their weekly pickup. Usually subscription-based, which I have, you get one large pickup a month that you have to pay for. These would be weekly if they were scheduled, and there wouldn't be a charge. Now, some of the advantages for the employee, again, everything revolves around worker safety, minimizes lifting. We won't have to have laborers slogging through the rain or snow. They would be off the street. We'd have the truck out if the roads were passable. The physical requirements increases the diversity and the longevity of the workforce. Some of the problems are the cost of the automation. You're looking at over, $1,500,000 for 3 trucks and, 6,800 containers for the trash. So, but my plan, would be to, we would educate every resident on how the new trash procedures would work. If they had more trash that went into the 95, that would go into the 95-gallon container, such as a move out, that would be scheduled.
Or a party on Kip's block.
Or a party on Kip's block, that will be scheduled.
Got a lot more problems than that, but keep going.
That was your main concern the last time?
Yes.
So, mailers will be sent out with that information. Approximately takes 1.5 years to get a truck, with the way the process is now. So containers would obviously come first. So we would still, during that time, we would train the residents on what the procedures are, and we could collect those containers with the trucks that we have now, because we do have the automatic tippers in the back of each truck. So I answered some questions for Commissioner Valenza today, and so did Randy, our Director of Finance, Assistant Township Manager Randy Scheibel. I'm sure you're all copied on the emails. I don't know if you need to go over any of those questions, or if you have other questions that you would like for me to answer.
So my concerns are more about the services we currently provide and the transition that you claim is going to take place. So sometimes I put out one 48-gallon trash can, sometimes I put out 2, but according to those numbers, even when I have 2, it'll fit in.
Yeah, I guarantee you
95 gallon.
95% would fit in one.
Okay. So we also have a certain number of residents that have a hardship with getting a 95-gallon container to the curb. We know that because we have the smaller recycle containers.
I was just throwing out the entire batch as 95 gallon.
Right.
There's going to be senior citizens that don't produce that much.
Right, but they still have to drag the 95-gallon container to the curb.
What we did last time was we bought a portion of 95 and a portion of 45 gallon. So we can.
But that was just for recycle.
Well, we can do the same thing for trash.
I understand that. What I'm saying is 48-gallon hefty trash can
right?
You know, somebody could make that to the curb.
But these have wheels,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot easier to take to the curb than
They're heavy. They're heavy.
a brute, 50-gallon brute trash can.
This is just one concern. You know, I see what gets picked up, what gets put to the curb, you know, regularly. And the numbers are pretty high that won't fit a lot of stuff into the 95 gallon. I realize it's gotta.
Like what? Dressers, chairs,
Carpets.
all items that would be scheduled for a pickup. We would have to send out a rear load truck with 2 guys on the back, one for certain areas anyway. On Tuesdays, Fulmer Heights, they can't handle a second can in their development at each household. They just can't.
So that's a portion where you can't really use automated trash pickup.
Right, so we would use a rear load. So that rear load trash truck would be going out anyway. So there would be, for a Tuesday, that's a Tuesday route. So for a Tuesday route, there would be a scheduled list who has a bulk pickup outside of the paid bulk. This would be a free bulk pickup for extra amount of trash, couches, mattress, box spring, even a house move out.
Yeah, and I know this is the future, and eventually we have to get there. You gotta take that nut and spend that money, and it's not gonna get any cheaper going forward. The transition of this is interesting. I don't foresee scheduled pickups every week. You know, like if it was every other week, because you would have scheduled pickups in every single ward. Every single ward.
We collect trash 4 days a week, right?
Right.
So Tuesday's route, we would have scheduled for Tuesday.
I understand that.
We're not gonna have a full day of trash pickup for scheduled trash, for scheduled pickups.
Okay. Well, whatever that schedule's gonna be, that can be altered as to, you know, how our use is, how it's acclimated to the community. But I mean, this is one of the things we do well. And I do know that there is a certain amount of abuse, and we should curtail that.
Right.
I don't want to get into the conversation about it, but I do want to mention the economics of the recycling. We talked about that.
Right.
You know, maybe we should be separating our paper again and going every other week with paper, and
Then we're worrying about the cost then with going to automate it. Then now we're gonna throw an extra trucks out on the, you know, to pick up paper. So then-
No, like, what I've seen other communities do is, one week they pick up paper, next week they pick up commingle without paper.
You're gonna have to provide a second can.
No.
Yeah. Where are they gonna put the recyclables once they put?
Okay, well, right, it does, it's not automated always, and it is, whatever, we have to, I'm looking at the, you know, we've had the conversation where the recycle's starting to cost more than.
Oh, yeah, that's the market. That's everywhere, right? That's a state DEP countrywide issue, what to do with the recycling and the market right now. You know, no one's making.
All right, well, look, there's other people here have a lot of comments about this. I see that, you know, the points you make about workers' comp and the workers themselves. I don't see how we reduce staffing that much, because we still do need staffing for, you know, other services we provide. But you laid out a good plan, and I'm interested in hearing other comments.
Now, real quick, when I brought this to the board, I believe in early 2018, it might have been 17, to go automate it with the recycling. I believe there was some kickback on that too. Like the residents, you know, how are you gonna train the residents? You know, the residents put paper out, you know, they put it outside their can. It was a process and it took about a year for us to train the residents of what goes into the cans. You know, we still have some issues, but you're always going to have issues. But that process has been working.
It's a much bigger learn for the community when you're taking away what they're currently used to.
Yeah, I think you have to give them more credit than that. I think it's going to be a lot easier.
Let a couple other people give you some point of views. Kip.
I know.
Well, you hit the first one. Talked to 20 people, 20 residents.
Right.
2 of them were in favor of it. Everybody else said, this is the one thing you do right now, good in the township.
Well,
I'm not going to say a lot of other things.
But can I ask you a question?
That's what they say.
What makes them think it won't be good? What makes them think that we will not do as good of a job as we're doing now?
Quantity and the extras, they didn't want to call.
But that's
all the time. No, I have that point. I'd be calling every 3rd week.
Well, then we would pick it up every 3rd week.
I'm one person out of 7,000 houses.
Yeah, there's not.
So that's one of my big ones. And that's just coming from residents. That's, there's a lot of unhappy people in Upper Dublin. They do it themselves. My daughter's neighborhood, they're not happy. They have 2 cans apiece. There are things that they have to call, which you always would for a refrigerator or, some of the stuff. But most of them had 1, and I saw a lot of them with 2. If you miss one, it's now all of a sudden, let's say you miss a Tuesday for whatever reason, holiday, storm, whatever. It's the following Monday, now you got 2 weeks for that 1 trash can of trash. There's another problem with it.
Can I interrupt for a minute?
Sure.
What happens in Upper Moreland if trash is missed now?
Goes to Monday.
No. Meaning, if trash is missed, like during the day, someone forgot to put their trash out.
You put,
you're back.
you put twice.
Oh, yeah.
We come back and pick it up.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't stop.
No, I know that, and I did tell them that, and I said, you don't have to worry about that in Upper Moreland.
Right.
We do go back. But I'm saying if it gets missed because of holiday, because of snow, because of whatever, that kind of stuff, that you're into almost a 2-week.
Right, in one big can.
I just add another trash can is what I do when it comes to that. The only reason you lose them to Parks and Rec, your employees, they would go there if that spot was open. When you first hire them, they would not go to you. They would go to Parks and Rec before you.
But
It's a matter of, with the union and everything else, they're the first ones to jump. It's an easier job.
I think there's some legitimate points there about people staying in the department if they're driving an automated truck as opposed to hanging on the back of a truck and tossing the trash.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I mean, but the ones that that are jumping are those one. That's who's.
Yeah, I think you'll see less of that though. I think it's.
I say that's going to happen either way.
I think that's a valid point.
With that, I do not know the real cost of if there's any difference in the type of truck, the cost of the type of truck. I don't know any of that.
Yes.
So.
Bigger car.
Or length of whatever.
Life expectancy of the truck?
I have no idea.
Yeah, even the trash trucks that we have now, they're all low mileage. We have a truck that's a 2005 Mack, and the only reason why we kept it, it was low mileage. It was, it was grandfathered for the newer emissions, so we kept it. We replaced the body and we kept it. Right. Usually what happens to the trucks at a certain period of time, the bodies start to wear out. And it's not cost effective to just replace the body at $40,000 or $50,000.
We tried that a couple times.
Right. No, actually, the bodies are $100,000 now. We did do it on one of the units that's 2005, and the only reason why we did that was because of the emission requirements. There weren't any on this truck. So that truck's still in service.
Uh,
But the trucks are more expensive. The automated are. They are.
I don't know, I'm just.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
throwing
they
that
are.
one out there. Full disclaimer, my wife does want the big trash can, this way. Not the old way, she wants the new way. She was one of the two. But I like what's happening, I like that we've always handled it. As far as if there's 4 trash cans instead of 2, because of parties, because of whatever. Now you're stuck with the one unless you want to buy another one, and then, that's up to the person.
So from a board perspective, it's about spending a whole ton of money and keeping the community happy,
I got that.
okay?
I understand that.
We're not actually, like, right now, we're getting accolades about our trash pickup.
Where'd the money come from that you said, American something or other?
No, you guys nixed that. You said you didn't want money.
Oh, okay, I just saw it.
Recovery Act. So we had the cans
Instead of
and trucks coming out of the capital improvement plan budgets. Right? That's where we put them.
We're using that for other stuff too. Then we keep going to that and.
It's dangling.
But they've been in there since its existence, the CIP, right, Matt?
Yeah, I don't remember what year, do you remember what year it's in right now?
Well, right now, we pushed it back because last year they tabled it, so we pushed it back, I think, to.
Yeah, but when we identified it for,
later,
capital improvement, though, when we borrowed the money.
Yeah, and remember, not all of the projects that are listed in the CIP are currently funded.
Right.
So,
yep.
Those out years, those 2 or 3 years, we still would need to borrow money for those, or identify the funding.
I have 3 questions. Are you okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
We talked about this last time. Another one of our concerns is the reduction of laborers on the trucks. Where do those laborers go? We can't lose any laborers in the automation process.
So, Park and Rec, I was speaking with Pat today. Park and Rec, they hire X amount of seasonals during the year.
Try to.
They try to.
We're able to get them last couple of years.
You know, at that point, we could share my labor pool with him when needed. Otherwise, they would do highway work. They would be on the highway side. We still would need 2 during the week to collect those areas that we're going to send the rear load trash truck out for the Former Heights, Justa Farms, a couple of the one-way streets on, Church, Cherry, the smaller areas off of Moreland that can only handle one larger can that they already have the recycling can.
Okay. Yeah, because, Evan, you mentioned 2 things that the board cares about, but I think the third one, which you've covered very well in your report, Dave, is the safety of our employees. And physical safety is one thing, morale is another. And if those people are not happy on the back of a truck and they're going to be moved into another type of job, I don't want to hear that the morale is still crappy because now they're doing work that they don't want to do or something like that. So I trust that you've thought that through and that's a concept that is okay with your teams. So my second question is, you stated that automation is 37.5% quicker than the way that it's done now.
The way trash is done now.
The way trash is done now,
Right.
So you've got 3 trucks on the road now. If it's 37.5% quicker, do you still need 3 trucks? Or
Yes, because they can't hold the volume of, 2 trucks wouldn't be able to hold the volume of trash. We're averaging a little over,
3 trucks per shift, per day?
3 trash trucks were averaging, it's like a 34 ton a day. Each truck can hold 10 to 12 tons, and we're just a little over that. Like if I put it, it's like 30 tons, right? It's 30 some tons. If I took 2 trucks, that's 15 tons. They're not going to pack. They're going to be able to pack 10 to 12 tons. So
it's the dump time, really.
Not the dump time. It's what the truck.
But you'd have to unload the truck. So if you were down a truck, then you'd add in the dump time for the
So the plan is 3 trucks would still go out, right?
okay.
They would finish up sooner,
Yeah,
because it's going to be approximately 37.5% quicker.
right,
And then they would be done earlier in the day.
yeah. So my point being, if you had 2 trucks, the amount of time that those 2 trucks would need to empty in order to make up for the
Oh, yeah, I don't think,
lost space.
we might take them towards the end of the day.
But you get my
After they-
point.
Yeah, after they come back to the dump, from the dump, they'd have to dump, they'd have to come back and finish up.
Right.
That's a possibility. I
And
didn't
then,
think of that.
okay. And then the third question is, and I think that this was in conversation with Commissioner Valenza, if this is something we're gonna do financially, it makes sense to try to buy all these trucks at the same time. How does the down payment work? And I don't need exact numbers, but I wanna understand if it takes a year and a half to buy these trucks and have them come in, how do we?
We don't pay until delivery.
We don't pay till delivery, okay, that's basically it. There's no like
No.
down payment that they have to hold them for us. If we change our minds after we purchase them, we can stop the purchase.
We would have to issue a purchase order.
Okay.
Oh,
Alright, so it's not like buying a car right now.
no.
So your transition would be to buy all the containers in an automated truck next year, one automated truck,
Right.
and keeping 2 rear loading trucks.
Well, at first, it's going to take 12 to 18 months to get the automated recycling truck.
Okay.
It's going to take about 2 months.
Automated trash. not-
Automated trash, I'm sorry. It's going to take about two months, once the containers are ordered, to have them delivered. So that would give plenty of time, depending when we schedule it, for, for build of the cans and delivery. It would be good to, have at least, I would think, a year to pick those cans up with the rear load trash trucks, because there's tippers on the back. The guys don't have to lift. They wheel them over, put them on the hoist, and it dumps it. And then,
Okay.
and then at that time, we can educate the residents on what the new procedures are.
Other communities that have this in place, how many times do they get asked for extra trash cans at a property, or they only entitled to 1?
I didn't find that out. I know around here, Upper Dublin is automated, Abington's automated, Hatboro's not, they collect like us. Lower Moreland, Bryn Athyn, they are hired out by, I think it's Republic Services.
Whitetail, wherever they are, yeah.
They're automated.
Okay.
So I can find that information out about how many extra cans, how many residents ask for extra containers.
With this, are we planning on, are you going to need less employees for trash then?
For trash?
Yeah.
We would only need the 3 drivers, and then the 1 driver and 2 laborers. So, that's, what's that, 6 employees?
Okay,
Whoa, whoa,
what are you going
whoa.
to do during snow, trash?
Oh, no.
All the other?
We would still have the employees. You don't want to lose any employees.
Okay, so there will be no reduction in employees?
My plan has reduction, but
Because you still have to do leaves, you still have to do all the other...
And
Paving.
17, there's 17 pieces of 18 pieces of equipment that go out during snow plow. That's the trucks, that's on full snow. That's plows, spreader, loader. Salt spreaders, there's 10. So during, a salting event, we need a loader, 10 truck drivers. During paving, it's about the same amount. The more the merrier that I look at it on paving, 60 guys shoveling work. Leaf season,
What about paving or leaves? I mean,
yeah, I just said that.
so if you...
Paving, we need like 10 guys on the paving crew.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you have the guys that do the trash would not be paving. And they don't do that now at all?
No.
Is there, most of them are seasonal except for drivers.
No, we have no seasonals.
And no seasonal at all
No
anymore?
seasonal at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, since 2019 was the last year we had seasonal. Once we went automated, we didn't have to hire.
Yeah.
Because once we went automated, there was 4 laborers off the back of those paper trucks that went over to the highway side.
Okay.
Okay, you talked about staffing. So I think we have to account for vacation time and sick time. So, you know, we don't want a truck sitting there because we don't have staffing for it in those situations. I think it's time to move this out of committee, and let the board vote on it.
I'm not, but you can.
Look, we're not losing our rear load cans. We're not losing them. So, you know, if it fails, we're at $500,000 for trash cans, but we can still use them on the automated, on the rear loaded trucks. It hasn't really failed anywhere. There's a certain percentage of people that are unhappy everywhere you go, Upper Dublin.
Yep.
Right, I know other towns that have it and that, you know, that they don't have enough, but I know that we're very compassionate about our trash pickups and the message has been sent here. So, I think it's time to let this roll. And we've clearly identified how important it is to community. And, how do you feel?
I mean, we do it. I mean, we gotta have a test run, there's a trial period. I think the workers' comp savings, the employee morale and safety, that's saying a lot. I think Dave's put together a really good plan. We give him some new things to think about to help unroll this. But there's growing pains with any new initiative. And if you're gonna keep our employee count the same, and we're gonna be able to offer a cleaner, more.
He has a long-term reduction in workers.
Excuse me?
You know, in the long term, you have a reduction in workers.
Well, I want to, but
Go fully automated and,
That long-term
3 trucks.
reduction in workers, though, is not tied to this
no,
process.
no, right.
And that's a conversation, if that's something you want to bring up, that's a different conversation.
right, I threw that in there to see what the cost was for each labor for each year. Well, I threw that in there, that one spreadsheet.
So if we have 3 automated trucks and we're reducing the rear load truck, we may lose we may be able to church employees.
That or help parks out.
Well, it sounds like you'd have 6 people who need to be reassigned.
2 would stay, right? 2 would continue to collect on the rear load. Because we're gonna, well, once we get the cans, we still need those 6.
Yeah.
Right? Until an automated comes.
Yep.
6 guys on the back of the truck, you know, 2 guys on the back of each truck.
Right.
Once those cans come, we still need them.
Commissioner Skull.
So you're going to take.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, everything about it. I think the main thing is how are we going to finance it? And I remember when we introduced this last fall, Sam said to me, well, we got to get grants for this. And I agree. I would think we'd be able to get grant money for this kind of thing.
I don't think there's any grant money out for trash. There's grant money out for recycling. I can double check on trash, but I don't believe there is.
There's
Even
about
with-
$500,000 out of our budget.
And even with the containers, I was talking to my container supplier, and he told me he was gonna look, and he said, is this for recycling or trash? This is for trash. He said, they usually don't give them for trash, but I can double check.
Yeah, the federal government's spreading a lot of money around. Have you noticed?
This is 700 million or 700,000 today, of this and the other. It's not budgeted.
And it's not going to get cheaper in years to come.
It's
Right,
not
right.
budgeted.
I personally,
3% increase. Tax. You won't be here.
I'm in favor. Most of the problems that you're talking about are things that you would have to work along the way anyway. You know, we don't have to solve the problems now. The main thing is, can we afford it or how can we afford it, to me?
Well, he just gave you the time frames for the truck, and the trash cans. So it's, if you put it in next year's budget, it doesn't come out till the following year.
Probably not gonna come out, if we put in 24, we're probably not gonna see till halfway through 25.
So how did these other townships do it?
Right now, with the supply chain, you can't get any trucks at all.
No, I mean, how did they raise them, where'd they get the funding?
Taxes.
They've been, Upper Dublin and Abington have been doing it for a while.
No, we have to increase the trash fee? Oh, no.
Would be interesting, I mean, so that's an interesting point, Nick. It would be interesting to know what that breakdown would be. If you took the complete purchase order for this initiative, you broke it down by household, what that number per household would be. Not saying that that would be the way that we would fund this, but just as an understanding of numbers.
I think when Dave first did when we were talking about some of the payback periods, so I don't think we would need, depending on how we're defining need, but right now for our services, if we automated, we could actually, through attrition, you could lose 2 employees. If you did that in the first few years, the payback, I think, was like 9 or 10 years. That it actually,
It's in-
something like that. Did you put it in there?
Yeah, it's in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, the payback was not super long. So that's how
That's
you,
if you start 2 years from day one, then it's 6.5 years.
oh, 6.5, so it's less then. But that's assuming two less employees through attrition.
When we did recycle, we also had a huge grant for the containers.
Right, we got a grant for the containers, and the following year, we got a grant for the truck.
Right.
Yeah, trash, I think Dave's right. I don't think you're gonna find any grants for trash collection.
Use the existing recycling containers as trash containers.
And get
And then
new
you get
new
new
recycling.
No, see, the thing is, we did that with the recycling truck.
Yeah.
We had to buy it back off of the DEP, actually.
They actually have provisions that it can't convert over to trash. If you bought it with the recycling grant, you can't convert that over to trash.
Yeah.
Other elected officials and staff members have thought of that one before.
But when we went automated, Commissioner, we were in need of another trash truck. And we did buy a rear load trash truck through the DEP grant to collect paper. And what we did was we purchased that back. So all we had to pay for a brand new truck was market value of that truck, 80% of the market value, which was considerably a lot less than a brand new vehicle.
Okay. All right, we can,
Just a quick comment. I noticed on here it said that the automated trucks will increase fuel consumption by 46%.
I saw that.
You could get grants for electric ones. I know they cost a lot more.
You're talking $700,000 for an electric.
They're having problems with the electric trash trucks. The batteries don't hold up and they
haven't perfected that yet.
Longevity dies off real fast and the cold weather affects them
In the,
greatly.
recouping costs, did you consider the 46% increase in fuel cost?
Yeah, we thought of everything.
Except for one question.
Except for one thing I asked you.
What's that?
I don't remember what it was.
But it was.
You don't even remember.
No, it was the.
Oh, it was
time.
it was the loop time for the trips.
Of trucks.
Trip loop times to the dump.
I asked with the,
No, you said, would I be able to finish up once those 2 trucks came back and finished up the route with 2 trucks? Yeah, I got that question. Yeah, most likely, yeah. Just depends on how far in the day we'll go.
Okay, any other comments? Trash pickup? All right, we're moving on. All right, let's move this forward.
We're moving to the board for the trash cans first, right? To spend half of
The whole concept, I mean, you're not gonna go buy trash cans unless the board votes on the concept. Yeah, we're
Okay,
gonna,
you're just doing the concept. When's the money coming?
the proposal. We'll talk about that next week.
Sam's gonna come back from vacation for that one.
Well, did you see Sam's email?
No, I haven't. I've been working all day. I haven't seen anything.
Sam said buy it all.
Yeah, do you want me to read what Sam said?
Next week.
I'll read it, yeah.
Next week.
Okay.
I'll read it. next week. He ain't gonna be here.
All right.
Okay. And we can revisit the finance of it next week, so keep that available.
Next April, or with the finance committee?
Finance committee just for the financing of the
Okay.
containers, but we're gonna vote on this.
Yeah, in April, right.
Okay. You wanna, see what else we have here? Proposal, yeah, let's do this first. Gilmore Associates proposal for site design services for township building renovations and police station construction project. Go ahead.
All right, it's me. Thanks, Kev. So we worked with KCBA to develop a scope for services that they would need in support of the police station project. That ranges from geotechnical borings, infiltration testing, stormwater design, site layout design, grading, MPDS permitting, and any other land development submissions that the township may desire for that project. So the scope's in front of you, and the proposal is a not to exceed number, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You know, the whole, the grading of the site, everything, right, is all included.
Yeah, everything is included in there.
I did question, you have a specific line item that says landscape architecture and plan design for the potential public amenity space, but you don't have landscape architecture and plan design for the entirety of the site, so is that?
The landscape architecture for the entirety of the site is included in there also.
Okay.
So I guess an omission in that scope, but
Okay.
certainly.
All right, and then my other question was, there's talk about a potential for a shared utility plant between the two buildings, and that would require coordination of underground utilities and routing and whatever would need to happen to make that all work, which would play into the civil design. So was that discussed with KCBA, and is that part of this fee structure?
That was discussed with KCBA, and I would include that in that fee schedule, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's, after talking with Matt Canlin the other day, there's one item in there that isn't exactly included, but I think it's more a scope item for McMahon from a traffic perspective, and that's determining how many parking spaces you're gonna want for this facility in a post-construction phase. Like when I looked at KCBA's current sketch that they have with the police station back there, there's about 100 spaces shown on that plan. I counted all your spaces from an aerial today for this whole complex, and there's like 150. So in that scenario, if you were just to go with that sketch, there'd be a reduction by 50 spaces. So like, I do think that early on in this process, we need to take a hard look at like, what is the actual demand for parking in this complex? And you know, whatever that number decides to be, then that's when we start to do our engineering design of the layout, and I try to incorporate all those spaces, but.
Right, and this is, well, it does say Township Municipal Complex, so it's everything.
You know, I'm looking at this as like you're building the police station, but you're reconfiguring pretty much the entire like complex from a parking and traffic flow standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a pretty big reduction in parking spaces. That we can, I think we can handle some, not that much.
So we may want to get McMahon involved at some point to give an opinion on, I mean, we can poll, you know, staff, this committee, you know, whatever, about how many spaces we think we need. But if you want to have like any kind of study done on that.
I think we can also lean on KCBA to do the proper calculations for required parking numbers, and then, you two can work together to design the layout of the parking aisles. I mean, McMahon, in my opinion, would come into play if we were talking about traffic studies outside of our site, access to it.
Sure.
That's up for debate. I mean, maybe it's a.
I think the basic point is that we need to decide how much parking you guys think you want and try to figure out.
I'm looking at current experiences, and I don't see how we can reduce parking by 50 spaces with our current experiences. So, I mean, we might be able to reduce it by 25, but yeah, I think that's a valid point, and I appreciate that.
Matt count the cars on a busy day. He does everything else.
My office can determine what's required by the ordinance, but I think Jim has a good point. McMahon can maybe let us, where the board can kind of say, hey, what do we actually need? And I think that's where McMahon would come in handy based on the uses. Like if you need X, but if the board wants more or less than that, then I think it's big for McMahon to make that recommendation, or KCBA. I mean, we can start with them, and they can say, because they've done a lot of municipalities, a lot of municipal complexes, and they can say, hey, this number is what you really need. Whether it's less or more than the requirement. See what they say. That's a good point as well.
Well, I like dealing with finite numbers, so, any questions about this?
I think you gotta give ACBA the chance to tell us what they believe, and then if it's not somewhere where we think it is.
I'm not talking about parking. I'm talking about the number here.
Oh, yes.
The proposal.
Yeah, this has to get done.
Yeah, okay. Any questions about that?
And this money is right out of the bond we already have for this
Designated
project.
for this
It's already
project.
designated.
Any other commissioner comments? Any public comment? Okay, related to the same topic, we have to set a date for a public hearing or conditional use application. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're moving that from you moving Gilmore's direction?
Yes.
Okay, so you
Sorry, yeah.
kind of rolled right into the
Yeah.
conditional use. That's okay, Commissioners. Cool. Yeah, I can jump in. So last week, we did receive the conditional use application for Bet Investments for the project at the Executive Muse property. So it's really just an FYI that we will have to set a public hearing date. We would like to set that date for May at the April full board meeting.
Okay. Any problems with that? Just to set a public hearing? All right, we'll vote on that on April 3rd.
So I guess we need a resolution.
No, just a motion to
Okay.
have us advertise it.
Okay.
So put it to April 3rd meeting.
Right,
Just
have
to-
us advertise it for.
Yeah.
Just,
Any other comments? Public hearing for, what do you call it? What's the name of that place?
Executive Muse.
I know it's the Executive Muse now. Don't they have a name for their development? They call it,
BT Blair or something.
public hearing, conditional use,
E.T. Blair.
2300 Computer Avenue.
Yeah, I don't think they've named the apartment building yet.
And 2300. I wasn't aware of the other other addresses, so that's interesting. Oh, okay. Moving right along, let's go into the reports, code enforcement, departmental reports.
sure, thank you, Commissioner. The committee has my February 2023 report. As comparison, I've included the February 2022 report. I have nothing to add to either of those reports, but I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
I'm good. I'm actually good.
I'm used to you asking them.
Nah, I just, permitting, that's all, but it's good. I have no comments about that departmental use, reports. It looks good. Thank you very much. Any other commissioner or public comments, for code enforcement? Hearing none, we'll go right into, Public Works and Sanitation report.
Thank you. You have my report for February 2023 in your packet for both Public Works and Sanitation. I have nothing further to add except we got the bid results for milling and highway material. They came out March 6th, so you'll be voting on that in April. The winners were JDM for the milling contract and Eureka Materials for the materials. So besides that.
It's usually been Suture, hasn't it?
Oh, he hasn't bid in like 5 years.
Last year either.
It's been A. Giuliani and JDM like every other year.
Oh, good.
Just good work to, I don't know if it was your guys or Parks and Rec, the gateway sign landscaping and the bench that went in over at the gas station looks.
Actually, that was.
Hey, good job.
Yes, the gateway sign.
Yeah, they look great.
Was done, the landscaping was done by Youngscape for the, what's it, the Liberty gas station, Ken Charles at East of Maryland Road. He actually contracted with Youngscape to do all his landscaping, and they implemented area around our sign in there as well. Looks great.
Yeah, looks really good, thanks.
Nice work. Commissioner McPatrick found a bench laying somewhere in a trash can.
At a bus stop.
Repaired it and put that next to this sign to hopefully keep people sitting on the sign.
Yeah.
And that was one of the problems.
Yeah,
Every time I drove by, somebody sitting on the sign.
Sitting on the sign,
Saw it there the other day.
Putting a bench in.
We need some advertising on that sign, on that bench.
101 Moreland Road, that looks great too. They just.
So, what's the possibilities of, relocating, of, a shelter for the, we don't want one? For the.
Don't want a shelter.
Nah, we don't
Block
want
the sign.
Yeah, nah.
So, but anyway.
Never mind.
And there,
The bench there until Abington comes looking for it.
and
Across the street.
and conduit was ran for, to illuminate the one in front of the gas station.
Cool.
Both property owners, extremely cooperative and we're thankful for that.
Yes, very much so. Thank you. Almost done with that grant, Paul.
What's that?
Almost done with that grant.
Yeah. Almost. Did our part.
Yeah, I know.
My only comment about, Public Works is is the traffic lights. They're supposed to be smart lights, and I just, you know, I'm still sitting through multiple locations now where like they're not reading left-hand turns. You know, the whole idea of spending all this money on this technology was so that, you know, we get better cues, the traffic flows better. And I'm still seeing like dual left-hand turns when there's only one car. They're not, you know, there's no cars coming in and they're just missing the timing. What's going on? I mean, we just committed to a whole bunch of controllers. Is the technology really getting better? What's the issue here?
So we've been working on your main issue at Sycamore and
Easton
and Mill.
Mill.
Yeah. It's been working on that. There's also an issue with Turwood and Davisville. The camera is out for repair in that area. So you're going to have a longer wait at Turwood Road. I'm sorry, at
Sycamore.
No, Turwood Davisville. You're going to have a longer wait because the
until you get your camera back.
Yeah, because it's going to be a full length green light before it turns red because the camera's not going to pick up the left turn lane.
I recently sat through one at Byberry in Davisville. It's one of our newest lights. And there was
Well,
no
exactly.
car.
We didn't put that light in, but I'll check, I'll have,
No one's sitting there to make a left-hand turn, and I got a left-hand turn arrow. Nobody's in there. So I'm all about spending the money on technology, but you know, we budget so much money for traffic lights every single year.
what direction were you going, so I can tell them?
I was going towards Mason Mill.
Okay.
And there was nothing sitting in the left-hand turn lane, and I had to wait. Okay. So that's my only comment for that, but, again, if technology is gonna work, and, you know, we don't have to, replace loops anymore, I'm all about it, but I get all kinds of, you know, I ask everybody, the people that are putting the stuff in, the people that service it, and they said that there's different ways that it works. Some work on radar, some work on infrared, and so. Okay. All right, thanks. I'll continue to ask that question, but I'll give you a break next month, so you can study it some more. Anybody else, any more questions for Public Works and sanitation?
Maybe it's only you that sits there.
I want to ask him about automatic trash trucks. I think we beat that up enough. Okay, any questions from the public? All right, moving right along, engineers report.
Thank you. My March 2023 report is in your packets. I do not have anything specific to add, but would be more than happy to answer any questions.
Something you and I talked about on the side, just, you know, about improvements at Fair Oaks that will eventually let us plant that basin and grow it better. When can we expect a proposal for that?
Yes, so I have two underground sediment trap structures laid out. I want to get some pricing from some precast suppliers and then, you know, bring you guys essentially a proposal. But we're looking at about a 10 by 10 concrete box with a 4-foot sump, and probably putting two of those in line, maybe 25 feet apart, around the pipe before it enters the basin. And then at that point, there'd be an access point or two in each of those boxes that Public Works could put the vac truck down there, and they could vacuum out that 4-foot sump area probably on a two times a year basis, I would guess. So as soon as we put some calls in, I got a contact from Dave, and I just got to make contact with the concrete supplier. I anticipate them being on co-stars, so it's not like a situation where you'd have to go out to public bid or anything. And I talked to Dave also about Public Works being able to install these structures, so that would also keep your
That's
costs
great.
down.
And how about the truck accessing the pits? We have to make any changes?
Our street sweeper has a attachment on the back where we do suck out inlets now. And I believe it goes down pretty far.
I'm wondering about, you know, the ground to get the truck to where the pits are gonna be. You know.
That's pretty sturdy ground, right? Wouldn't you say, Jim?
Yeah, it's not too soggy there. And we'd come in off of Scroble and
like,
down a short drive.
if we had to do any reinforcement or maybe some, you know, some rocks underneath of it, I don't know, you know, like, did we try to move a truck there or not?
We
try.
Yeah.
Going down the trail, right?
Yeah, it'll be right down the trail.
Yeah, I think the trail's probably 6 feet wide.
Yeah,
I don't know.
the truck would definitely be wider.
Both sides of the trail, right. But I know when they dug that up, it's a ton of rock that they were smashing out of there to get the dig, so it should be sound enough for the, but just make sure that the truck can go there before we decide on the location.
Okay, yeah, no,
And make
we'll
some changes if we
coordinate
have to.
Sure.
Any other questions for the engineer's report?
I'm excited to see the bids for the farmstead next week. sure that'll be part of the agenda for Parks and Rec. So thanks for coordinating that. And then just out of curiosity, what's going on with the Olive Garden redevelopment?
Either one of us can answer it.
Yeah, I mean, it's close, right? I mean, we finally got all the development agreements worked out. It was a pain in the butt trying to get an easement agreement out them for future road widening. I don't know. 4 different attorneys that didn't seem to have any concept of what land development was. So there was quite a few hurdles to get over. But we've got an agreement there. We've gotten a draft. We're just waiting on a legal description to be prepared so we can finish that. And then the final plans are apparently en route. So it's almost ready to go.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, plans have been reviewed. It's just, construction plans. We're just waiting. So
yeah,
we addressed all the administrative provisions with the agreements, and then
yeah. No, that's fine. It's just surprising. You keep driving past it and there's like nothing going on over there.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I've never seen so much attention to development agreements in my professional life as they were with these. So I mean the delay was all on their end.
All right. Yes. Very good then. Leave it there.
So there's 2 items on the landscaping report, and that's one of them. Mod Car Wash was in here, and they're moving forward. They have some things to do, so I'm looking for activity there. I expected to see something from the Olive Garden this month, but it looks like we're not quite there yet.
I mean, you literally have to record the agreements and the plans and they're good to go, so.
We're waiting on the record plans to be submitted.
The construction plans are approved for Olive Garden from a engineering and a landscape architecture standpoint. Actually, McCluskey and Faber, Kim Flanders approved those when McCluskey was still the.
Right, but it talks here about a pending pre-construction meeting.
Yeah, we're waiting to have we're ready.
Okay.
Whenever they are. And we'll record everything and then proceed.
Okay, any comments from the landscape report or the engineer's report? All right, hearing none, we can skip right over the traffic engineer's report. We had that earlier. Eastern Montgomery County Turnpike Interchange Group, Matt.
Yeah, there's nothing to report. They haven't had a meeting, so their next meeting, I think, is in April. So we'll have something to report at the next CDC meeting.
Okay. Do you know how we made out with Lower Moreland?
You mean
adding them to the committee?
It's been suggested. I know that Matt Edmonds has been speaking with them.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. EAC? Hello, Lynette. Thank you for being here. Sorry I missed your meeting last week.
Oh, well. So we decided to begin meeting in person again here in the council room starting in May. So that's been reserved. And we also discussed further ways to inform the public about a possible bag ban. And of course, in the newsletter coming out this month, there's information for contacting you. And of course, we'll have stuff at the Earth Day Fair and library, et cetera. Also, is there any sort of list we could get for businesses in the township?
Maybe George, maybe?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Some of that information would be protected.
What kind of businesses are you trying to find?
The ones that we would need to contact about this, about the plastic bag ban?
Yeah, we might, because we do business tax, we might be able to come up with a list. Check with Randy Shable.
We've shared that list before.
Yeah, we might be.
It's George, it's a George item.
Okay.
And he might even be able to help refine that a bit, to some of the big box stores and the ones that would be issuing bags, as opposed to maybe try and thin that out, with the stores that don't issue bags.
Yeah.
So yeah, check with Randy on that.
Okay. Also, we hope that the new Birdtown signs and certificate will be presented at a township meeting. I think Pat Stasio is actually in communication with Audubon about that. Also, we were wondering if the property line survey is done for the library property?
We've been working on the survey for this property, but the boundary hasn't been complete yet.
Okay.
So it's close.
Okay. They were wanting to be able to, go ahead and order fencing for the Outdoor Environmental Education Center.
Okay. I know that we found a good amount of property corners, so I'll check with survey to see if we found any along that common line. If we did, then that could be staked out, like,
All right, great.
So they
very
want to
quickly.
include next to Treasure sign as well?
That's exactly what he's talking about.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
That would be between the library and Treasure sign as well?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
If we found two corners there, then I can have survey stake that line out before we even do the boundary retractment, so.
Okay, that would be awesome. Thank you.
I'm not sure it's all aligned symmetrically. You might have to try to find four corners,
Okay.
with the properties that are on Center Avenue.
I'll see what we found.
Thank you.
We looked at this years ago. It was a problem.
Okay. It's probably not that easy then.
Yeah. Also, as requested, we sent Pat Stasio tree species for the dog park. And then, of course, we spent a lot of our meeting planning for the Earth Day Fair. It's going to be even bigger and better this year. Maria Collette, Nancy Genst, and now Madeline Dean have all indicated they would be there. And of course, Briarbush with a native live animal presentation, DJ, food, crafts, fun, lots of information on environmental issues, etc. Also, I'm wondering if the EAC can have a Facebook or township page like many other EACs, Andover, Abington, etc.
I would think that a website page through our website would be attainable fairly easily.
Are you asking for a Facebook page that you guys would maintain or one that the township would maintain?
Either one.
Because the township Facebook it's not interactive.
What?
So it's pretty much one way. So we disseminate information on the Facebook page, but we do not have conversations on the Facebook page.
That's fine.
Yeah, we can disseminate, we can do that now. So if you had
Okay.
information that you wanted to disseminate out, we can do that.
Okay, all right. And I guess the other thing, it's, unless you know it exists, you can't really find the EAC on our township website. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about that.
Have you spoken with Vicky about it at all?
Vicky? No.
Okay. Well, let me make a point to talk to her, and I may have her reach out to you.
Okay. Okay.
Has she shown you do you know where it is on the website?
I know where it is, and I never even thought about it being difficult to find, because I just put it right in there, but if you're just scrolling through the township site, I put EAC in right from the beginning.
It's under township, I'm looking at it right now, it's under township information.
Uh-huh.
And then the third column, first column, it's like the fourth item down, Environmental Advisory Council.
Okay. I know last time that I kind of looked for it, if I didn't know it was there, I wouldn't know it was there. So maybe it's changed a little bit, because I know stuff has been reworked. Okay. That's it. Any
I don't go
questions?
to the directory, just put EAC right in there.
Yeah, when you get here.
That's pretty easy.
All right, any questions?
Why don't we talk about the date and the time for the
It's
Earth Day?
Saturday, April 22nd, from 10 to 1:30. Briarbush will be there from 10:30 to 11:30. Seems to be a big draw.
Family event.
Yes, sure.
I'll take a sign whenever you have those available.
Okay.
You have lawn signs.
And yeah, I can bring one next time.
Okay, great.
Anybody else want one?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions for the EAC? Okay. Historical Commission. Good evening.
Good evening, almost good morning. Just saying, I feel a little bit like our commissioner from Ward 3 for the second. So just reporting on the Historical Commission. Paul, I thought that we might look at the issue that came up. The historical, number 4, the historical preservation overlay revisions recommended by Claire Warner of Montgomery County Planning Commission. Paul had sent the original email to me asking me to look it over. You all know that Arlene Rubin is our legal advisor on the Historical Commission. She has a copy of it. She and I are going to go over it and make sure Paul has it. There were just a few questions that required some definitions that we needed clarification from Claire. So, and we did vote to change the, as recommended, the age of an historical site or asset to 75 years, which is in keeping with the national historical understanding of the age of historical items and people and everything else historical. So just saying that that was a vote, so that that will be done. And I don't believe we need to bring it back to the committee. We talked about just the clarification side and removing something, and we voted to remove it if removing it made sense, which is actually a definition of family, if you remember, Commissioner Brucey. That was the issue. Other than that, yes, the signs will be done finally, the 3 that we agreed to do quite a long time ago now. We're just waiting for that one last piece for the W, since we decided to, or the Willow Inn, since we decided to do a redo on that. And then each of these groups, the Willow as well as the church, the Willow Grove Methodist Church, would like to have an install done. So the other one would be the Dubray House, which is out here under a tree, and I wasn't sure whether we were going to put it up there, given the tree, basically. That would be up to somebody else. It's where it goes, but Paul?
I'll just get them made, I don't install them.
What sign, the signs that are in my office?
Yes,
Is that what
sir.
you're talking about? So
Yes.
you need to take them back to Treasure?
Yeah, we'll get them back to Treasure Signs,
Okay.
yes.
When? Can I drop them off?
Please don't until we actually make that contact and everybody is happy with
Okay.
seeing you come through the door. So,
All right.
okay, so they don't get dumped back accidentally because somebody didn't get the information. Somebody didn't read their email. So I'll make sure you know that
All righty.
ASAP. But that said, do we have any thought about putting that sign back on the campus before removing one sign? Does anybody have a thought about that? Other than that, it'll go back to living with you, I guess, until that decision is made. And that-
I don't understand the question.
It goes
Where's it
under,
supposed to go?
it's on the sidewalk under the tree next to the first one, next to the police department.
Yeah,
The
right-
one
right
on
on-
the corner is the
We
red lion.
removed the old one and put that one.
You want to
Yeah.
put it right back under the tree? That's what ruined the one that's there, that's why
Well,
I
this
asked.
one's not gonna get ruined.
Yeah, we'll put it closer to the sidewalk
Yeah.
so folks can see it.
Okay,
So that's a
All
valid
right.
point, though. I mean, if the tree needs to be elevated to prevent some of the sap or whatever it is that's going on there, to let some more sunlight on it.
Park
All-
Avenue.
All issues to.
yes, sir, Park Avenue, right, mhm.
Yeah, I know which one.
By the bus stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We also talked about having a conjoint event with UMHA, and I talked to President Kathy Ebers about that. Sent her an email today, just confirming that idea between our groups for the purpose of deed research, opening that up to township residents. So having talked to Matt about raising the interest of our community as a whole, this is just one of our ideas to get people interested in either the where their business is housed or their home itself. We can do deed research back to 1784 without having to go downtown or some other place to do that in the state. And the county itself, the Recorder of Deeds, Jean Sorg, has developed a program that she herself is giving, but we can bring her here, and she can do that in September, and that sounded like an event that the UMHA would like to use as a kickoff in the fall. I'm going to attend Belmont Hills Library, excuse me, which is March 21st. She's going to do a presentation there to find out the complete scope of the program. And that'll help us with our deed research as well. The more people that can do it with greater efficacy, the better it all is for all of us to put more things on the commission if we can, to have the inventory enlarged, but also just for the interest of township people. Know about your house. So.
That's great. Moving the milestone from 100 to 75, do we have a list of qualified properties that aren't on the inventory?
Well, there's a lot of properties that were built, around World War I. So yes, that would increase the potentiality of properties being put on. But again, it's a very definitive process. Just because your house is old doesn't mean that, it would be on the inventory. There's certain things that we set up that are in the ordinance. So I think the idea that, every house of a certain age could possibly be, it just isn't how it works.
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the passion for expanding the inventory. And, I know there's a lot of structure that is that old. And, I think more of, the churches that we talked about that really would fit into that niche.
Yes, the McKinley Baptist would, the St. David Roman Catholic Church would.
Correct.
And if these, yes, they're buildings, and if they would like to be, we had talked about reaching out to those entities. We were going to have some of our commission people reach out specifically to ask and make those relationships happen so that people would be comfortable doing that.
You latched on to an interesting point, though, Commissioner Spearing. That topic of moving those years was a very hot debate amongst the commission. Basically because we started off at 75 and then there was a vote several years ago to up that to 100 because of the nature of the stock of buildings within our community. Right. And now the vote sort of split, decided to push it back to 75. So I don't know if that warrants any more conversation with the BOC or if we just leave it with the HC. Either way, it's a fine thing, but I know because it's going into our zoning ordinance, I just wanted to pose the question if it needs to come back
To be resolved, right.
to us.
I was here when we changed it, from 75 to 100.
Well, we did note that we didn't put anything on the historical inventory since the American Legion. So that's in 2011, and I did it, so I know about it. So that change did not create any passion on the part of anyone to include, a significant
What
amount.
we qualified as unique architecture that wasn't even 75 years old, that made it to the inventory years ago.
Yeah, well, we talked about special circumstances like that too, where, and that stock is a little limited within our community, but if a house is of a significant piece of architecture or was owned or operated by a significant member of history outside of that 75 years, then it would be something that would be discussed and reviewed, but we just don't, we haven't identified any properties that fall into those categories at this time.
No, not at this point.
So one question for you is that we do have, a property that's not in the township on our inventory.
It was removed. You mean the one on Blair Mill Road? Home Road?
No, it's Moreland Avenue or, no, it's Moreland's next one up.
What are you thinking
By the
about,
wooden bridge.
Commissioner?
Wooden Bridge in Hatboro.
Was that William Buck's house? Is that what you're thinking?
Oh, yeah.
That was removed.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
We took it off the inventory?
Yes, Commissioner Skull was on it.
Hatboro didn't like the idea that we're putting a house
That
in
we-
their township.
I know,
They're
we
on
co-op
historical
one of their
commission now?
houses.
Right.
They didn't have a historical commission, so we had put it on our inventory.
We did.
Do they have an inventory of their own now?
They do?
I don't-
I'm asking.
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't believe, no.
That's a shame.
They have they have Millbrook and they have their historical commission, but they do not. Abington doesn't either, so
I
they
was
don't
just-
have any
I
inventory.
wanted to expand that because Commissioner Skull was, actually pivotal in saving, the edifice of the Hatboro YMCA.
Absolutely.
And I thought that, we could have included that on our inventory, but, well done there, Commissioner, but
That's true.
so
Looks
much for
good.
the list.
Yeah, exactly. Any questions or anything you want to share tonight, other than that?
Good work.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to comment that I think the ordinance originally said 50 years, and then Don Warner didn't like that, because I thought it was, we get too many not old enough buildings or something like that. Anyway, so then it went to 100, now we're going back to 75.
It actually went to 75 and then 100, somewhere in there, I can't remember. Maybe that was the national that was called on.
Yeah.
I
But in any
appreciate,
case, the number doesn't really have anything to do with it if it's a historic house.
well, unless the ordinance, do we have to appeal the ordinance?
It was part, the only reason this conversation came up was
Even
because it was
happened.
part of the county's review of our zoning ordinance. There's a specific line item in the historical overlay portion of the ordinance that talks about the designation of historical properties. And she requested or recommended that we change it to 75 to align with the national
Okay.
criteria.
So again, do we have to change our ordinance?
It would be changed as part of the zoning.
APA over,
Yeah.
right.
Okay,
To get in line with the comp plan.
okay, so that,
Donor for the past 2 years.
right. All right, good.
That's how it'll happen
We'll
then.
wait for that to come then. We don't have to take any extra action on that.
No,
Yeah, this was just a review by the HC
Right.
to provide recommendations on Claire's recommendation.
So Claire's working on all that, and we'll see a
You'll see.
comprehensive,
It can be, has to be historic for its architecture, or that somebody famous lived there,
age
independent,
alone.
independent of the age. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because your house isn't nearly old enough, but we can
No.
put your famous
I'm
stature.
almost over 50 though.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
okay.
Right, thank you.
House on the hill is 50.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes all the items on the Community Development Committee meeting. Is there any visitor comments? Any commissioner
Are there any
comments?
visitors?
It took so long, my battery went dead.